7 o'clock. We'll call the meeting to order. Karen, would you call the roll, please?
Commissioner Young?
Here.
Commissioner Miller?
Here.
Commissioner Brink?
Here.
Commissioner Kubal?
Here.
Commissioner Steeler?
Here.
And Chair Gerard.
Here. We ask you if you're able, please stand and join us for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you all. Before I ask for a motion to approve the agenda, I want to bring your attention to item 5. We have a consent agenda, and this is new for the Planning Commission. So if you're not familiar with this, this is meant to really streamline some of the stuff we have to take a look at and take individual votes. So everything under the consent agenda would be one motion to approve the consent agenda. If you want...
I'm sorry.
Okay.
You're okay.
Okay. I always have Susan over here in my ear telling me when I'm wrong, so I stopped. But if there's some reason you want further information or you need information, or let's say in the place for the Planning Commission minutes, if you needed to abstain when the motion's made for the consent agenda, said I'd like to remove item A, and then we'll have a separate discussion on that. If you want information on, so that's how it would work. Am I correct, Karen?
You are correct. Consent agenda is one sweeping vote for all the items that are on that, in that section. If you want to discuss, or you weren't here, or you need to abstain, ask for that one item to be removed, and it gets put to the regular agenda.
We don't have a lot of items on our consent agenda. If you look at the agenda for the city council, they can have 15, 20 items that are primarily business. You know, someone wants a tobacco license or a liquor license or a massage license, whatever it might be. So with that, the chair is looking, oh, Susan?
Was I not in a planning commission meeting where we considered the Culver site plan? Did we consider that Culver site plan at a previous planning commission meeting?
We have not. That is a new application. Staff is asking essentially the planning commission to consider some of the more routine or minor site plan amendments by consent, as to kind of free up some of the commission's time to discuss maybe those applications that are a little more comprehensive. It is a new policy-based decision that the commission may want to consider tonight.
Further questions? No.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we approve the agenda accepting item 5B.
So, first we approved a general agenda, correct? So item 4?
Yeah. That where we're not, I'm asking to approve the agenda
Yes.
with the exception of item 5B.
So you want to pull 5B.
Yes, please.
I have a motion to accept the agenda, removing B. I have a second.
Second.
I have a second. Any discussion or any other changes to the consent agenda?
I guess my question is, why are we pulling that?
For further discussion.
Okay.
It could be because
Got it.
Susan wants further information on it.
Got it.
Or whatever.
Yep, I get it.
I believe that we would want to pull A also. Karen?
Just a point of clarification. So you would approve the agenda as it is, and then when you get to the consent agenda considerations, at that point is where, if you wanted further discussion on 5B, then you would pull 5B. You would approve the consent agenda portion, removing 5B to the regular agenda. So if you're approving the agenda, it would be the whole agenda as it is, unless you are removing that item completely off.
I'm not removing it completely off, but I'm sorry, I do it a different way in a different council, so let me get the way that you want it done in this city council.
Or commission.
Planning Commission.
Chair's looking for a motion to, item 4, to approve the agenda as presented.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. It's a non-debatable, correct? It's a non-debatable. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. Here is looking for a motion to approve the consent agenda with 2 items. Do I have a motion?
Mr. Chair, I would move approval of agenda item A, but I would like to pull agenda item B for further discussion.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. Discussion on, since this is the first time, I believe a couple of commissioners were missing from the last, so you're in the meeting minutes. So you would normally abstain, so I would say that the friendly would be to remove A, and then we'll have to vote on that. And then what'll happen is you'd be able to abstain to that one, if that makes sense. So basically, I would like to
That's what I was just writing down for you.
change the motion to also pull item A.
I would second that. I'd make a motion to do that, yes.
Is your motion?
Yeah, but now, yes, sir. I'll go along with that.
That'll
Second.
move things forward.
All right.
Yeah.
So we'll take item A first. Discussion on approving the planning commission meeting minutes. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions?
Abstain.
Same.
2 abstentions. Item B, Resolution 12-07-22-01, the Culver Site Plan Review. Ms. Young, you asked that to be pulled. Questions?
I do have a couple of questions. One, Culver's is a very, very popular restaurant in town, and it has significant traffic problems. So much of the site plan that I looked at in the agenda, it looked like it was going to improve things. Is there a way that you could pull that site plan up for us, please?
Yep. Give it a second.
I believe we'll be on page 23. No. Yeah. We're on 23, page 23 on our handout.
Could you just sort of walk me through how traffic is going to flow under the new? And the part that I'm concerned about are the cars that are going between the building and Broadway, and how those lines are going to be delineated, because that's one-way traffic now through the site, one-way traffic. And yes, Culver's backs up onto Broadway frequently, especially in the summertime. But I'm concerned about those cars that are coming across the front of the building, between the building and Broadway, making the right turn. And how is that going to be delineated so they are not going to come into oncoming traffic? Because people right now are used to building 2 lanes going into Culver's.
I'll give it a shot,
Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Do you understand the
Yep,
question that
I
I'm
think so.
asking?
So this is for everybody, this is Broadway on the site. There's one entrance and exit here. That, as I understand it, stays the same, and it's unfortunate, this is the lighting plan, so it's got all the dots on it. The traffic, one possibility, you can enter here, follow the building all the way around, and then come through to the drive-through. This is where one of the changes is. This changes to a double drive-through queuing area. The pickup window's here, and then as they do now, the cars would go around the front. There's some outdoor seating here with patio, and that gets removed, and these are spots, as I understand it, where people can park and wait for their orders to come out, be brought to their cars. There's 3 spots shown here, and then they come back down and exit onto Broadway. I don't think the intention is for people to then get their food and come all the way around and go the back. I suppose they could, but that seems unlikely. The other changes in the back, on First, there's one driveway somewhat in the middle. The proposal now has two, so the vehicles can come in and loop around this way or come straight in this way. And it also helps facilitate for longer vehicles. Say if you got a camper or a trailer or a boat, you can, in theory, pull through into these spots in the back. The front doesn't really change, except now you have 3 spots where people can park and wait, where before this was the outdoor patio seating area, and that gets cut way down to have 3 additional waiting spots, if you will, for orders to be ready.
I have a couple of questions. So that what is now the exit to the west will be shut down?
Over
Right
here.
there, where your cursor is
Yep.
now, that is an exit.
That is an exit, and that will remain open.
Nope,
That will
okay.
remain open.
They will have that exit at that location.
Yeah, my mistake.
Okay.
The eastern bound traffic will also be able to hang a right and take an out. I think the in and out arrows on what would be the eastern. Pardon?
No, the eastbound traffic cannot go out there and go eastbound because of the barrier on Broadway.
No, I just meant the eastbound traffic in the site could
Oh,
go
I'm sorry.
out.
I'm sorry.
And when they stop at the building or where that drive aisle is, they can hang a right and then hang a right back out onto Broadway. The arrows at that access point are inverted. Essentially, you're showing the arrow in a left-hand drive lane, it would actually be the right-hand drive lane.
That was my point. Yeah, it seemed kind of funny.
There are a fair number of people that prefer to do the light that is just east of here, and so they would go out toward what I call the Dragon Park, and then take the right so they have a light to go back, especially long
I see what you're
things,
saying.
because they don't want to try and make the U at the intersection to then go eastbound down Broadway. And then, are there going to be people going back and forth to that little island kiosk that's there on the,
This?
Mm,
Just
no,
what
the other one, where the driveway splits and goes there?
That's the menu board. It's, so cars can line up on either side and place their orders.
Okay, that wasn't clear, because I had some concerns about people trying to go back and forth there.
No,
All right. And then what is the new little building there?
this? That's a proposed garbage dumpster enclosure. Staff, we made a comment about that in the staff report. Without knowing how their operation is, we think it would be better placed up here, closer to the building.
It would be better almost any place, because again, that really cramps traffic flow in an area where people are going in and out of that building by the first, those first stalls.
Here?
No, up further, there, those are handicap stalls if I remember right. And so,
Yeah.
No, and
I
handicaps
don't,
in the front.
handicaps are down here now.
okay,
This all gets restriped because of all the
okay,
but what it does do is it blocks incoming traffic from interfering now with these spaces back here. It forces cars to go around.
it's not that far to walk to go back to place that dumpster, and quite frankly, it'd be easier for the front load trucks to place it back on the northeast corner of the property.
Down here.
There, yes. And quite frankly, for the front loads with the forks, it's gonna be a lot easier
Well,
for
that's
them
why-
to service.
That's why I thought here, and the front load could pull in,
But then they have to back out.
but at 5 in the morning, is that?
Yeah, they're not open.
I don't know, but we didn't make it a condition that they change that, we suggested it.
Okay.
It's their operation, and
I,
we hope they know what they're doing.
okay. I do have some concerns about this traffic pattern.
Mr. Chair,
I understand their desire to improve it, and it does need improving.
It's my understanding there is somebody from Culvers here that can possibly answer questions as well.
I believe, drive aisle that goes in front of Culver's so you can come around the building again, that's already there currently.
Yes,
All they're adding is parking spots.
these three are new.
So the flow, in my mind, improves greatly. And I don't mean to insult Culver's here, but they have kind of the same drive-through going in that McDonald's has, where they got 2 lanes, then they merge them together, and then they're out. Quick, fast, I'm happy as a clam. My wife will be even happier.
And the food's made to order.
It is.
Sir? Did you have?
Do you have any comments you'd like to add?
Yeah, may I?
Please, I ask you to come up and state your name and address for the record, please.
My name is Isaac Reba. I own the Culvers in town here, at least a part of it. I had a big part in designing this with Ken and Kimley Horn, and he helped me out. I did get his recommendations to move the dumpster area. The area he recommended, we are in agreement on. I have that back to our architect to see what that looks like. As far as moving it to the northeast corner, we employ a lot of younger children, younger kids, and moving it that far away, especially with the way the lighting plan sits and being so dark around the edges, that's why I didn't want to put it there. That would be my first spot too. I agree. The other thing that I see on here, why we chose the current location of the dumpster area was there is a lot of traffic that goes from Broadway north to First Ave. A lot. And I have another Culver's location that's very similar. The traffic goes fast. And it could be dangerous. And that's why I thought maybe we'll put it there just to slow people down a little bit. Take that into consideration. I am having Kimley Horn, though, redraw it, and I was going to resubmit it as soon as I get it to Ken to say, hey, does this work for you, to put it more in the center, the 3 spots closest to the building, just across. I don't know if I can make that work. So to clarify, does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. Any questions, I guess, before I move on to your concern about the pass around?
I think it's creative to use a dumpster as traffic calming.
Okay.
No, I'm very serious. I look at traffic calming options on a regular basis, and I hadn't thought of this one. Okay.
Okay. The pass around, what we're doing with that is we're trying to eliminate more cars getting backed up from our window back. As we do make our food fresh, it does take time to make that food, which is why we need the extra parks after. If we're increasing the amount of orders being taken, we need more parks after the food, which is what we're getting there with the 3. The concern was trying to make the U-turn to the right to go directions west on Broadway, I think. Is that correct?
Correct.
West goes toward 35.
West goes towards 35. Probably not going to happen. We're going to direct to try to do most traffic to go north back to First Ave, loop around. A lot of our traffic that flows through there already does that. They don't want to make that right out. They don't want to make a right. They want to make a left, so they go to the back of the lot, go around. I don't know what the street is.
It goes down to 8th.
Yes, thank you. They go to that one. So it's going to be very unlikely we get people doing the U-turn to go west on Broadway. As far as the outdoor seating, we're looking to remove that and move that closer to our front door and spruce up our front entrance area. We recently purchased the restaurant November of last year in hopes of making some substantial changes, making it look nicer, and that was one of them, is kind of spruce up the patio, spruce up the landscaping, make it look better. So that's part of it.
So help me understand, after I pick up my food, I'm going to turn left across the front of the building, and then I'm going to turn left again, is your preference, to get me down to First. How do I make sure that somebody who is turning right into there doesn't crunch me.
Careful driving. That is all I got. It's going to be better than what we currently have from a standpoint of the traffic is already going through there.
It's kind of like Burger King though, isn't it? So
I'm
if you
not
come
super
around,
familiar.
you have to go in front of that
I've got a
building
Burger
and it's
King.
still, well, I mean, I
Yeah,
don't really either.
I don't
I'm
either.
just telling you, that's, I think that's got the same kind of a,
But they have that already. They already have that traffic. And people can choose either go straight onto Broadway and make a right turn or cut through the parking lot and go back out towards the north. I mean, that's been there since day one. Since my kids were little and they would play out there with the cars going by them.
Now, if I may, with
And
that,
it backs up on Broadway, and what I was hoping was that we wouldn't have that as much.
Okay,
But I
so-
understand your concern.
actually, I have something to fix that almost, I think. We are adding, you weren't incorrect when you said on my letter that I'd sent in, my proposal, we are looking to add I'm calling it an ordering pod. Culver's has designed a face-to-face ordering pod. We have one in our parking lot now. It's not used. We're having some staffing problems. We're not using it as much as we should, but we are looking to place something like that that matches the building right to the north of the second drive-through lane. And that would create a face-to-face experience, which then, instead of that lane 2 traffic being piled closer to Broadway, would then be able to be parked on the right side, west curb line, away from that. So our busiest days, say 4th of July Friday, Labor Day weekend, Memorial Day weekend, we're really hoping to staff that face-to-face experience, remove them from the window, keep everybody on that side and not come east in front of the building. We just want both options to be most efficient for our customers is really what I'm asking for.
I have wondered what that little wooden building was.
Yes, and it is very unfortunate. It's tough right now.
I understand.
what are the
Mr. Chair?
spaces, sorry.
Oh, go ahead, Justin.
What are the spaces that are encompassing, looks like C and A or under L? It's right on the north side of the window,
These here.
or I should say the west.
I think those are staff parking.
So those are the parking that we would like to use for that pod. I think currently they're lettered A, B, C, D. That's where we would keep them away from the window.
So on the times you would not want to use the pod, say on, not busy, would that be then converted to normal waiting spaces or no?
There's no good way to get somebody from the window to those spaces during non-norm, so we will most likely leave those empty. If you were to go through our lot right now, they are empty right now.
Oh, okay. I know sometimes people will back up a little ways to fit in,
And
but,
we're hoping to eliminate that
Right.
by having the additional wraparound lane on the front, so we don't have that back and forth there as well.
Any other questions for the applicant?
Oh, Mr. Chair.
I just
then-
have, you're taking away some patio area. Are you going to be relocating any of that, or did you find out that people really didn't use it?
We live in Minnesota and Wisconsin.
Yes?
Patios are much more apt in Florida, but even then it's too hot. We are looking to relocate an additional, probably 2 tables to the front of the building. So I think we would lose 2 outdoor tables total, so go from 6 to 4. In my experience at our Baldwin location, called Wisconsin, we have 4 tables. And we are a travel store there as well. They only fill up the 4th of July weekend, as I'm sure they would here too.
Okay.
So we are looking to keep those. Do you have any recommendations? or-
No, I was just kind of wondering, because
Okay.
some people want that, they really want it, but if you haven't been using them a lot, then the customers usually get what they want. So if they don't want it, they're not using it, that's fine with me.
We are not losing it.
Okay.
Yep.
Mr. Chair, I did have a question for, when you speak of the pods, is that similar to what Chick-fil-A has in some of their stores? Where it looks like a phone booth essentially?
This will be very similar to what we already have. And I'm I'm jumping the gun slightly with Culver's on this one. They have a design. I've seen it. It's not fully approved. I believe I sent you the plan. And what I would like to do is get that approved plan, and I'll send that to you as soon as I get it from Culver's. The prototypes I have seen they look good. They look better than our building does now. We're looking to stick money in to make everything flow better. I've seen the traffic back up to Broadway. It's not pretty. We want to get that, and that's where all this started, so.
Great.
Yes, it'll look good.
I like how you said how for safety reasons, having that trash enclosure closer to the building. Is it possible even to fit it, even kind of by the north of the restaurant there? Or is it just the walkway, kind of the old ramp or the current?
Yes, currently there's a rooftop ladder that comes down off the back, and it's also our back door that takes all our food deliveries.
On the west side of the north side?
The west,
I thought it's on the east side of the north side.
northwest corner where the tree dealie looks right now.
Sorry.
In here.
Sorry.
Justin, are you saying in here, Justin?
Yeah, kind of right in that spot there.
The trick is then how do you get the garbage truck to it?
Can't get a front loader there.
Oh, yeah, that's true. Okay, I guess I thought it was a little bit more space in that left.
Thank you for your time.
Am I good?
Any
Thank you,
other
guys.
questions to staff or the applicant? Hearing none, the chair is looking for a motion.
Mr. Chair, I would move approval of the site plan.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion on the motion?
Mr. Chair, if I may?
Yes, sir.
We are included, there is a resolution on page 5 that we're referring to. If the motion, I assume, is referring to the resolution that's included?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
And for Karen, motion to approve the site plan, including resolution number 12-07-22-01.
Any discussion on the motion? Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention? Motion carries unanimously. Good luck with your project.
I'm hoping for better traffic flow.
It's coming.
I'm sure they are also.
We will move to item 6. We have a public hearing and a resolution of 12-07-22-02, Forest Lake Ford Site Plan Review and Variance. This is a public hearing, so how this will work is that we will have the city will present the application as they understand it. We will then ask any clarification questions from the commission. We will then ask if the applicant would like to add any further words to it or give any presentation they would like regarding their project. We will then open it up for a public hearing, and I'll give further instructions at that point. After we have the public hearing, it'll come back for a decision by the Planning Commission. So with that, Ken, are you presenting?
I am, thank you, Mr. Chair.
All yours.
So I put the map up on the screen for this site. It is the proposal for Forest Lake Ford on 15th Street Southwest. The site's between 15th Street and Interstate I-35 in this location. It's currently 4 parcels with one in the center having a existing building on it. The other 3 are vacant, and I'll scroll down. It's an aerial photo within the last 2 years of the site. In question, the plans, I'm going to switch now. Big old set of plans. So again, redevelopment of the entire site to build a Ford Motor Vehicle dealership. There are 2 billboards on the property that would remain there in this corner and down in this corner. Again, the 4 properties would be combined into one for the site with 2 entrances on 15th, one here and one in this location. Service entrance going in here into the building, showroom, parts, service bays in the rear of the building. This site's in the B3 zoning district, which does allow motor vehicle dealerships as a permitted use. It's consistent also with our 2040 comprehensive plan, so there's no issues with that. Most of the site plan meets all our requirements for setbacks and those types of standards, building height, building setbacks. There are two things that I will touch on in a little more detail. One of the requests was introduced is for a variance to the maximum impervious surface limit of 80%, and that's primarily to add or to have this display driveway or aisle out along 35. And then they're also proposing a parking lot setback of 5 feet along the freeway, and the standard is 10 feet, and that's not obviously consistent with the code. The design of the building, I'll try to find an elevation here, is really, and I'll just touch on this briefly while we're here. They are not proposing any above-ground stormwater ponds. There's 2 large underground chambers on this plan for stormwater management. For those that want to know, there's a lighting plan or landscape plan. I'm trying to find the elevations. There, come on. One more.
Yeah.
There it is. Those are the best elevations. Actually, it's, in my opinion, quite a good-looking building with a mix of materials, has a visual interest, major finishes on the exterior that we support and like in our code. So really no issues with the design itself. Site design, as I touched on, there are many different elements. I'll try to hit the highlights. Generally, the landscaping plan meets our requirements. Although it does not, the landscaping plan does not show irrigation for any of the landscaping. It may not be required in all spots if the landscape architect can show that there's not a need for irrigation depending on type of materials and areas. And we'll need to have a final plan with that shown where irrigation would happen or not. Tree removal, there's 2 areas of what I would call large trees or significant trees on the site. This area and this area. There was, and all this would be removed, the whole entire site would be removed and cleaned out to build the new facility. The city did not receive a tree or woodland inventory, any information about that with the application. So as we cannot, since we don't have that information, we cannot make a determination on how they fit with our standards of, the code allows up to 60% of larger significant trees to be removed without any kind of mitigation or penalty. So we're requesting as one of the conditions that a tree plan be submitted with the inventory so we can then make a determination on what type of mitigation or replacement or tree fee need to be paid as part of the project. There is a lighting plan that was submitted. It did show that parts of the site were too bright at the property lines, exceeding our lighting standards. I'm not going to go to that, but they've been advised of that and they are working to revise that to make it consistent with requirements. The trash enclosure is proposed in this location on the site. And the 3 walls of the trash enclosure are proposed to be materials compatible, excuse me, with the primary building. That's great, but the gates are shown with chain link fencing and vinyl slats, which in my experience don't hold up. So it's a staff recommendation that the design of those gates be changed to something more sturdy and long-lasting that would be subject to staff approval. Signage, let's see if I can find the signage plan. They're proposing several signs on the site, and I'll find it. You know, this one will show sign locations. Oh yeah, here's the signs. So there's 2 wall signs proposed on the freeway side, 3 wall signs proposed on the 15th Street side, a monument sign out here, and then a pylon sign here. All signs meet our standards, except for one. The code only allows 2 wall signs on the building per street frontage. So we have a condition in the report that this elevation be changed to show only 2 wall signs instead of 3. So it's another item, detail that needs to be worked out. And I know I'm gonna be talking a lot, there's a lot here. If you have questions, you wanna interrupt me, it might be easier. If you want me to go through, I'll keep pushing on. So if you have something hot and exciting you wanna talk about, let me know. Parking. Parking is a little bit tricky for an auto dealership. We have a base number in the code. I talk about it on page 5. It shows that they need to have at least 99 stalls, and they show that. In reality, car dealers, automobile dealers need a lot more spaces than that. This plan shows an additional 275 stalls for inventory, staff, vehicles waiting to be repaired, parking. I can't tell you if that's not enough parking or not. When I worked in Maplewood, the car dealers there never had enough parking. They were always looking to get more, and I'm sure they need all the parking that they are proposing here, because that's just the way the business is, assuming inventories come back and they can actually have cars on the lot. But so that's why there is so much, well, blacktop and hard surface on the site, because they need it. And I think they would tell you that even the manufacturers require enough area to have enough vehicles on display. So I'm fine with the number of spaces. What's a little bit tricky is they are proposing many of the parking stalls in the center of the lot to be 20-foot long, which is our code minimum. But those spaces along the perimeter, along the landscape areas, and some of the spaces up against the building here and here to be only 18 feet long. And the code allows that in areas where there's enough room to not impact drive aisles or not block sidewalks and that kind of thing. And again, vehicles next to landscaping, if they're a long vehicle, they can overhang into the landscaping, assuming it's not tall shrubbery, that's usually not a problem. Where I'm a little concerned is spaces against the building, say here and here. If you get long vehicles that start blocking the sidewalk that's not real wide, that kind of defeats the purpose of having the sidewalk there. So just my recommendation that those be signed for compact vehicles or staff parking or something to help mitigate the potential for conflicts with the sidewalks in those areas. A recent update that I do need to touch on, and I'm going to go back to this map, is we just received yesterday from our consulting engineering firm information on potential wetlands on the site. The applicant did not do a wetland inventory initially. The natural resources team at Bolton and Mink, looking back at aerial photos, discovered that there may have been wetland up in here, or may still be, and there may have been some here. But none of this has been checked in the field. They are looking back at older aerial photos that showed the potential for wetlands in those areas. And because there was no wetland delineation done prior to this application, we can't make, as a staff or the city, can't make a determination if there was wetlands there or were they filled in previously, and maybe that could be determined. What, if any, mitigation would need to be done because of the wetland changes that have occurred, if there were changes. Part of what you have before you this evening was an updated resolution where we added a couple of conditions that are underlined at the end, conditions 14 and 15. One talks about the wetlands and the wetland work that needs to be done to meet the requirements of the Wetland Conservation Act. None of that's in your staff report, so I wanted to bring that to your attention. And that's an important item because if there were wetlands there, maybe the previous owners did something and filled them, we don't know. But that affects what can be done, how this site needs to be treated going forward. The current developers, owners may have to somehow mitigate that. I don't see a way they could do it on site. They may have to look into wetland credits or wetland banking off-site and try to find a way to do that. But we're not there yet, but it's a factor that comes into play, and that's why there's one of the reasons you have a new resolution before you. I think condition 14, and that talks about wetland requirements that still need to be met. Going back to the site plan then, one of the elements that is included and touches on the impervious surface variance request is this, what I call display aisle out along I-35. If my math is correct, if this was not part of the site plan, they would meet our 80% impervious standard, maximum impervious standard. With this now, it pushes it, the amount of impervious surface over the limit, not a large amount, about 2,700 square feet, which is 1.05%, so 81.05 versus 80. The applicants made a request to have a variance to that standard to allow for this. They are proposing to do it with a pervious paver system. Unfortunately, our code is not real clear on when and where and how pervious paver systems should be allowed or could be allowed in the city. There are parts of the code that talk about them. The city has allowed them to be used in some residential situations in shoreline districts, but it's not clear for commercial industrial sites or business sites. Should we allow them? How can we allow them? Under what conditions? Does that meet the intent of the code by having pervious pavers there? I could see where some people could make that argument, and I think Susan has a question.
With that display area, what's the setback from the highway there?
That's also shown at 5 feet, so that would have to be shifted 5 feet to have a 10-foot setback, just like the parking up here has to be shifted.
I have a question. The packet we were sent has sheet C200 and then C600. And what you were flipping through on your screen, there's a C400, and which you flashed by it really quick and said there's subterranean storage of water. And I was like, wow, I never saw that because it doesn't show up in our packet.
Right, and I tried to send to you what I thought were the most important and most interesting plan
But if we're
sheets.
talking impervious, we're talking about water removal, and so we've got storage, on-site storage of water,
Yes, stormwater.
stormwater. So in my mind, that's a big deal, because now I'm not as concerned about the impervious, because we've got somewhere for water to go. Water's going there, so I just wanted to make everybody clear of this page, because this wasn't in the packet that was sent out to us.
Correct.
And can we, I don't know if you can blow that up or talk a little bit about how that system is intended to work?
I can't, but the engineers here, and I think that'd be best, project engineers here, we'll let him
Okay.
address that when they speak.
Because it would make a difference if they plan that to be retention or detention. And
I'm sure it eventually outflows someplace, but maybe not. That's, well,
magic.
maybe it just goes into the ground. I don't know, but that's a great question for the project engineer. So back to the impervious surface. Again, it's for this display aisle along here. I certainly can understand folks that think, well, they want to do it with pervious pavers, that's really impervious surface, that's okay, we should allow it. Unfortunately, when you look at all the variance criteria in our code, which I outlined on pages 6 and 7, in my opinion, it doesn't meet the strict criteria we have for approving a variance. Now, could you make the argument, does it meet the intent of the code because it's really not pervious, or not impervious, it's pervious? if treated right, maintained right, it could probably function that way. Strictly though, again, my opinion for reading the variance criteria, I can't check all those boxes that the commission, the city needs to say, yes, you can approve a variance. So that's why, at this point, staff's recommendation is to deny the variance request. Is there a way to maybe finagle that? I'll let the commission have that discussion if they wish.
Is there something about the building that it could not be any smaller? I'm just looking at the letter that was submitted.
And
That's saying we are the request, saying that we aren't able to reduce the total impervious surface due to size requirements of the facility and minimum parking. So is there,
I'm not aware of any, but again, that'd be a great question for the applicant. My guess is the manufacturer says this is what you have to have to build for Ford, but that's another applicant question. So that's the variance. Comments then, we did receive comments from our city engineer. I tried to summarize them. Many technical things that need to be addressed and changed. The applicant's aware of it. That includes dealing with stormwater, the wetlands, many different things. The fire chief is requiring the installation of 3 fire hydrants within the site, and that'll have to be approved by him with the final plans. Excuse me, the watershed district did give a preliminary approval, conditional approval. They have more things to get ironed out for their permit. When I wrote the report, I had not received any comments from MnDOT. Since then, of course, I did get their comments. Their primary concern was that if there's any work or activity along the freeway that would impact drainage into the freeway or any way disturb the freeway right away, that needs a permit from MnDOT. It's a pretty standard comment from them. So nothing unusual with that comment from them. We did not get any comments from the neighbors or any of the public. I'm not aware of anybody, I didn't get any phone calls or emails about it. It's primarily other commercial businesses around there. I wasn't expecting any. So all that said, we have our site plan considerations for approval. Again, overall, it checks most all the boxes except a few of the things I pointed out this evening, some of the setbacks, impervious surface, those items. So our recommendation, we have 2. If you look on page 9 of the report, first is to deny the variance request to increase the impervious surface. Secondly, then, we're recommending approval of the resolution. You have the revised resolution before you. It now has 15 conditions instead of the 13 that were in the report, with 14 talking about wetlands, and then 15 is a new condition we're adding to all our approvals to make sure that people know they have to pay their bills as a part of the approval process. And Susan has another question.
Does staff have a recommendation about the variance request for the 5-foot setbacks?
They did not ask for a variance request on that. We are recommending that they revise the site plan to meet the 10-foot setback.
Okay,
So the only variance request is for the impervious surface.
thank you.
Other questions of staff?
I'd just like to note, though, Commissioner Young, as a follow-up, because we have noticed for a variance, and because that is a variation, if the commission did want to act on that, we would meet our statutory requirements for issuance of a variance or any other variance if we determined one tonight.
And as I said, there are representatives from the applicant here to answer questions as well.
Questions for staff? Hearing none, would the applicant like to say a few words? I'm fairly confident we have a few questions for you. Good. I ask you to state your name and address for the record, please.
Brannon Grease, 500 North Commercial Street, Neenah, Wisconsin. Good evening. So I'm architect representative for owner Brian Okabo, and then he's got his contractor, and we do have our civil engineer here as well, so we can bring him up particular questions related to the stormwater. Just a quick introduction. This is a new Ford store that we're really excited to be a part. Ford hasn't released a new point in many, many years. So big deal for the owner group and for us to be a part of this project. We've been working on this since really early this year. So almost a year now, end of year. So we appreciate you guys hearing us out. I appreciate Ken and Abby's response during this process. I do want to address, Ken has quite a few conditions here. We've had a chance to go through this with the owner group. So I can address, I'll probably just walk through it quickly, line item, but I want to answer any of your questions first to make sure we get those answered as we go through it.
Why don't you start?
Yeah, okay.
We're not, as you've noticed before, we weren't shy at the earlier one, so.
So just looking at the resolution, I'm gonna skip 1 through 9. Those are pretty boilerplate, and we intend on meeting all these conditions and requirements with no issues. We do have conditional watershed approval. It's just, they're standard conditions. We have to pay surdies and submit final plans. So the watershed is final approved. We do have a few conditions we need to meet just with submitting fees and final plans. The items that we'd really like to discuss is the 80% impervious surface. So we met with the city this summer and the consultants, and we talked about the 80% impervious, and we talked about going over it by using some pervious pavers for a display pad. Part of the importance of this display pad, if you're familiar with this site, we have a larger elevation change between our site and the highway than the dealers across the street. So we're trying to get some additional visibility to at least our display cars and our pylons so they can see that our store's there. So the display pad we have as impervious or pervious pavers, and that was actually at the time on the recommendation of the city. They said the code's a little bit vague, so we're gonna recommend that you go the variance route, but we would support that approval. So that's the route that we went, and we still feel like it's a good route. We are willing to put up escrow money and do a maintenance agreement, so you guys know that we're taking care of the pervious pavers and they remain pervious over time. It's important to us and it's important to the owners, so anything we can do to prove to you that we're going to make this pervious and stay within the intent of the code. I think that's the true words, where we are staying, our design meets the intent of the code, or at least that's our opinion. The route of the variance was just on the recommendation of the city. So that's why we submitted the variance for that. Item B with a 10-foot parking lot setback. So the way that the code reads, we are allowed a 5-foot rear yard setback, and we are looking at I-35 as our backyard. It's the back of the building, the back of the parking lot. So if it's a rear yard setback, we are allowed a 5-foot setback versus a 10. So that's why we didn't go for a variance. Again, it's interpretation of the code and what's a front yard and what's a backyard. We're using 15th Street as our front yard, and we do meet the 10-foot setback on the front yard.
So it's a residential property that has a front yard and a backyard?
Any property has a front yard and a backyard.
Across the freeway from us, we have multiple that go all the way through from one street to another, and they would be 2 front yards.
2 front yards. If we had 2 street side, like if we had 2 entrance off I-35, I would, this is where we were going during the design, and that's why we designed it.
And just to be clear, Ken, the city's opinion is that we have 2 streets here? And
Yes,
that's why
the
we have
code
2
talks
fronts?
about a through lot fronting on 2 public rights of way.
Okay. I got yours,
Yeah.
now we got yours.
You got
Thank
ours? Yep, so, good.
Good try.
The other items, we are good, C, we're gonna work with Civil to redesign and accommodate either a larger stall or no sidewalk. We understand where Ken's intent is going, so we have no problems. We're gonna upgrade the trash enclosure gates. We're working on the lighting right now with our lighting consultant, so we feel we're gonna meet all standards there. Freestanding height poles is not an issue. We're gonna irrigate the landscape islands, and we're gonna revise our signage plan to take a logo off that, our front elevation, or our east elevation to meet the sign intent. But again, we're working with Ford and we'll have a full sign package submittal for approval, separate of this. But the intent is that we'll be within code and not need any variance or additional signage. We have started the tree inventory, so we are working through that. We will get that done. I don't know timing, but we do understand that'll need to get completed prior to permit approval. The last and the biggest item would be 14, and that's that wetland delineation. Again, back in August, we had sat down with the city and their consultants, including Bolton Mink, and we're of the understanding if the watershed did not have issues with any potential wetlands, because there are no mapped wetlands and there are no indicators on the DNR website, that we can move forward. We actually had pricing to do a delineation back in fall, and based on that conversation, did not move forward with the delineation because we did not think it would be required. The issue now is we're in December and we can't get a delineation until first growth in spring, so that would delay the project 5+ months if we have to go down that route. So we're asking you that we don't have to meet item 14.
So you're looking to start do winter construction?
We're looking at starting construction in March.
Thank you.
Soils, I mean, you can do a soil boring now.
We can do,
And-
we have
and
soil borings. There are no wetland indicators within the borings, but that's not, they're asking for a delineation, and you can only do delineations during the growing season.
Learn something new every day. So basically, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, Brandon, but you're concerned about 10A and B and 14 of the resolution. Everything else you're pretty much on page with?
You can put those words in my mouth. Yes, that's, I agree with that. Yes.
Okay. Susan?
What is your plan for dealing with 40% of the trees? You can remove up to 60%.
We can move, so I can't answer that, right? So we are working on, we have a arborist going out to do the tree survey. And so we will need to figure out of those trees, which actually qualifies significant trees. And then anything above the 60%, we understand that there's a payment per caliper inch that we're gonna have to pay. We just don't know what that is, and we will handle it accordingly with the trees, but until we have that survey back and have a chance to work with our landscape designer and the city on what those requirements are, I don't know, because I don't know how much that is. I don't know how many significant trees are in there.
Want to understand about their stormwater?
Yeah, I do, but I'll let him, I'll wait till you're finished and then we'll get the engineer to explain C400. Are you finished with yours?
We do have questions on the stormwater.
I'll let Eric come up, so thank you.
Thank you. Don't go far. I ask you state your name and address for the record, please.
Good evening. My name's Eric Meyer. I'm with Larson Engineering, 3524 Labor Road, White Bear Lake, Minnesota. And I'm the civil engineer for the project.
Eric, should I jump in? My question is just if you could explain sheet C400 and how that helps with water flow off this site with an 80% impervious. You know, there's a lot of water flowing off this site, and when we look at going to 81.2, it's really tough to do, but it seems like you have a system in place here to help things, and if you can explain that to us all, we might better understand it.
Yes, so our stormwater is managed underground through a chamber system. Our soil borings on site were clay soil, so we could not get any infiltration to take that water completely away and soak it in. So with the Comfort Lake, Forest Lake watershed requirements, when you have non-permeable soils, or you have impervious soils. We do have a filtration system under that, so it'll go through the chamber, which holds water to slow it down, and then it filters through a sand layer to help clean that water, and then it will leave into the city storm sewer system. And so you treat more water when you filter it versus if you were to just soak it in completely.
So your chambers will, you're gonna, how deep is this, please?
So there is a foot of sand underneath the chambers that it filters through into the drain tile, and then the chambers are like 3 feet tall, and then there's minimum cover above that to get your parking lot in. And so there's 2 separate chambers due to the inverts that we had to tie in with the city street, because we couldn't replace that storm sewer, and then we had roof leaders we had to tie into for the building, so that's just why it ended up being 2 separate systems versus 1 larger system.
So those are going to freeze in the winter.
Well, it's-
So in the spring, when you have frozen material in your chambers and you have spring rains, where is that water going, please?
Well, the surface of the ground is like a 906, and then the bottom of the chambers are an 899. So they're 7 feet deep total to where the bottom is, slightly deeper than frost, but there's some airspace in there.
Right, but, and then you've got, you said a foot, foot and a half of sand, so you don't have a full depth. And you're above frost line, and those chambers aren't going to get a lot of spring sun warmth, so they're gonna stay pretty cold. And when you have spring rains, where is the water going, please?
And so there is, per the state plumbing code, there's a bypass so that if the system is full or you get a rain beyond the 100-year event, the roof leaders have a bypass so that those will not back water up into any of the building plumbing. And that would just, as hard piped into the storm sewer as kind of the worst case scenario, large event, something's blocked, something's not working.
At the time of year you're talking about, the ground is 100% impervious.
You betcha.
So, I mean, what difference does it make? How does it make things worse? I mean, if that didn't exist, the water would have to go somewhere as well.
What we would typically have is a pond, and the pond has got freeboard, so that even when there's ice on the pond,
So a pond's required if we're meeting, if we've got an 80% impervious for this size lot, it requires a pond?
freeboard. It requires a
require a
certain
pond,
amount
okay.
of freeboard.
It requires some type of stormwater management.
Yeah.
Whether it's a pond, and
And-
that's what our engineers, the watershed district, and their engineers all work through on.
Okay.
I just want to make sure that we're not going to have sheet flow out on the 15th, out on the 15th. All right, and create an icy situation there.
You know, if I may, I'm familiar with these, I installed one. We had absolutely no problem. It saved about 50 parking spots, that's the equivalent of what the pond was, and it was for 200 parking spots in a 40,000 square foot building, so whatever that math works out to be. We had absolutely no problem. In fact, the nice thing about this is it kind of works on the leaky bucket syndrome. I'm not a civil engineer, I'm a manufacturing engineer. Where it all comes in at a large volume, and there's a small pipe to exit. So instead of overwhelming the city's stormwater system, it'll slowly come in. And this is what we found where we had ours installed. The whole neighborhood dried up because of this system, and it really worked well. They will be required, you know, that they have to clean out the traps, and there's, I think there's an oil trap in there and some other stuff that they got to come and pump them and make sure there's no junk and
Debris.
yeah, debris. And we had absolutely no problem with it, and it was about as deep as they say. They come in, they strip the whole thing out, and they got this big hole, and then they start filling it back up with all these little Quonset huts, and put a rock on top, and you're golden. Worked fabulous, man.
Good deal.
So my question would be, I assume this is sized to accommodate that extra impervious?
Yes, yes, we have it all modeled going into the system with that impermeable paver. So those would soak down and those would have a sand under them as well, and then a drain tile. So those will, not gonna directly run off, so the water gets there slower versus if it was a true, concrete or asphalt paving. So
And are they gonna drain into this, these main stormwater?
yes, yeah, so I think we had submitted slight revised plans to the city engineer, kind of eliminating any drainage into MnDOT's right away, and then that had a kind of extra little surface catch basin that would collect any overflow runoff from those pavers. We've seen other paver systems too that don't have the pervious, or the impervious bricks. There's systems that you can, grow grass on as well, or we've done some with like a synthetic turf for a fire truck, so it was at least green looking, that you didn't have to water. So, I mean, there are a few other systems available that I think we could discuss with the owner, if the concern is on, the impervious brick that's part of the system. There are other ones that don't include bricks, whether they're just a pure gravel or like an enhanced sand that you can grow ground cover in as well. Whether that's maybe less vague in the code if that's impervious coverage or not.
Keys uses the impervious brick, or the
Pervious brick,
pervious,
yeah.
the pervious brick.
Yep.
But your pervious paver system will be 10 feet from your back?
Yes.
Okay.
And being a civil, I don't know if you're the parking lot guy too then, because can you back up on that fence line 5 more feet without a difficulty?
At the northwest corner? Yes, yeah, we have room to, so because we're maxed out at the 80% on the parking lot paving, to move that northwest corner in 5 feet, we can keep basically the same number of stalls, and we would just shrink those center islands. Center islands are kind of oversized just to, get that 20% landscaping. So we get 5 more feet of landscaping on the northwest corner. With that increased landscaping, we can add, a little more pavement back to the parking lot. So it should balance for the number of stalls. Because the 5-foot versus 10-foot setback counts as the landscaping. So increasing that landscaping, we can decrease 1 or 2 parking lot islands to keep the total 80% on the parking lot area and building.
Other questions for the engineer? Any other questions for the applicant? Thank you. We may have more after the public hearing, so thank you. This is a public hearing. Way this will work, we invite anyone who wishes to comment on this application. Please come up to the lectern, state your name and address for the record. Spend a couple minutes giving us your thoughts on this application. Once we have heard from everybody, we will close the public hearing and it'll come back for further discussion with the Planning Commission and decisions. So with that, it's 8:08, we will open the public hearing. Does anyone wish to speak to this application? I repeat, does anyone wish to speak to this application? Karen, do we have anyone online or any emails that need to be read in?
I have no one online, and I didn't receive any emails.
Thank you. We'll give it another few seconds.
I just want to clarify on the delay of this wetland issue. It's not just the delay on having to have the delineation during growing season. A lot of it has to do with the construction material timeline delays. So right now we're looking at ordering transformers, electrical transformers, and precast. Electrical transformers are 410 days out, so a little over a year to get. So we were gonna order those now after Plan Commission meeting, if we got approval, knowing that this project was gonna move forward, because we know we're not gonna get these for another year plus. So if we have to wait until April or May to understand if this is even a feasible project, that's gonna push us, we're gonna lose the time between now and April and May of pre-ordering some of the long construction lead times. So overall construction, we're looking, 6-8 months past the time that we're supposed to be open. So I just wanted to clarify that timeline.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else wish to speak to this application? Karen, I'll ask you one more time if anyone's come online since I asked.
No one.
Thank you. Seeing no one come forward, we will close the public hearing at 8:10 PM. With that, commissioners, discussion, motions, et cetera? Susan?
For the city to be protected, we need to include number 14, the wetland mitigation. However, there are opportunities for you to mitigate off-site that would not delay your construction schedule, so that you can still get on in March, do some of the wetland evaluation work. Commissioners, if we approve this, I would like to reword item 10G to say that irrigation shall be installed in all landscape areas to ensure the plantings will survive and thrive. We've had some opportunities to see in the city areas where irrigation was not supplied and there was no surviving and no thriving. And I would also like to add a condition
Wait,
16.
Stick with, can
Sorry.
you repeat G, how you want it read, please?
Yes, sir.
Since this is a resolution.
Irrigation shall be installed in all landscape areas to ensure the plantings will survive and thrive.
Done.
Pardon me?
Done.
I'm still on the second word. All right. You got another change?
Yes, please. I would like to add a condition 16, that there shall be no parking on 15th.
For anybody at any time, or?
No parking associated with this property on 15th
15th Street?
15th Street.
How do we walk through on Sundays when no one's there?
Commissioner
Pull into
Young,
the little driveway piece and park just like you do on all the other ones on the other side of the highway. 15th is a fairly narrow street, and this would be problematic.
Commissioner,
Yeah.
I would just question whether or not that would also include during construction, and whether or not the commission would want to impose that during construction, only because sometimes full site development can get tricky for construction parking.
And I can waive during construction. That makes sense to me?
Thanks for noting that for the record. That's helpful for just enforcement purposes.
I just want to understand what you're asking. No parking for this particular piece of property or customers of this property? And how are you going to enforce that if it's someone else?
When you look at other large dealerships, there are often the lot gets full with lots of brand-new cars, and so all the employees park on the street adjacent to the facility.
Okay.
Or you have a tractor trailer or two that park overnight on the street adjacent to the facility.
Okay, so you're suggesting a no parking completely, nobody can park there?
Correct.
Okay,
Because that is a narrow street. It
Wasn't
is-
that widened though?
Pardon me?
Wasn't that road widened? Looks a lot wider than it was several years ago. It's even got spaces for, just asking.
It narrows you to one lane at the curve.
Well, if you look at, yeah, I mean, this obviously looking years ago, you can see how narrow that road is, but,
It's got some type of median in it.
it does. There is a
It's
median kind of right in front of the
like a
property.
painted
that's
median.
Turns into a turn lane kind of by the storage facility, but,
Other discussion? So we will, Kevin?
My question is regarding the delineation of the wetlands. Is that something that, as a city, is something we need to be concerned about, even though there's no wetlands showing there? They've already done some boring tests, they don't show any. I mean, is that something we really, as a city, have to worry about?
The city is the responsible government, local government unit for wetlands, anything affecting wetlands in this part of the city. In the southern part, the Rice Creek Watershed District is the LGU, the local government unit, but in this part, it's the city and not the watershed district, so that puts extra responsibility on the city regarding wetlands. And up till yesterday, I wasn't aware that there was a history that there may or may not have been wetlands on any of these properties. The timing is poor. I will not disagree with that. But I think as a city, we could be, I don't want to say in trouble, but we are the responsible local government unit to ensure that all the aspects of the Wetland Conservation Act are being met. And we were notified by our consulting natural resources staff at Bolton and Mink, again, that there may have been wetlands there that were filled or disturbed in 2016 or 2017, probably before this group even bought the property. And until more exploration is done to verify that, or not verify that, or unverify it, however you want to describe it, I don't think the city's in a position to waive that requirement. Now, I don't know if Abby has a different opinion, but that was the advice we were given by our consultants, is that we have to address that. And maybe there's no issue, but that can't be 100% confirmed, probably until spring with the delineation. Maybe there's ways they can walk the site and do more ground truthing right now before it gets snowy to get answers on that. If they can, great. But we can't, I don't think we can ignore it either.
So if there were wetlands that were altered, what happens?
Then whatever was lost has to be mitigated, and usually it's done with some kind of wetland banking. In a site like this, it would be done with wetland banking, which means creating wetlands or paying for wetlands off-site,
So could they,
someplace in the watershed district.
could they put money up front in case there was and continue with their project and then just?
But how do we know how much and how many square feet? And we start getting some fuzzy math there that
So if the
potentially.
city feels a responsibility, could the city pinpoint 2 specific locations that they take a boring? Because the boring's gonna tell you the soil conditions at that specific location.
And I
And that would cover the city's butt in terms of doing their due diligence to look at the area, even though it's frozen and they've got a schedule, we're trying to help them as well. I would think that would be a way to get through this in a timely fashion. If the city's, if the city could pinpoint 2 specific locations and the boring folks can go out there and hit those 2 spots.
Well, 2 points. They said they did borings, and what they found is they didn't find evidence of wetland.
but I don't know where they.
But they
did the
might have
They
boring.
typically, yeah, they'll do 1 or 2 borings, and who knows where they did them on site. The civil, they probably have it on a map on there showing where they did them. Maybe perhaps they did one exactly at those spots, but probably unlikely it was.
The way I wrote 14, especially the second sentence, it says this process may include completing wetland delineation, having the TEP review, and preparing a mitigation plan. I'm not saying that those will be the steps. I know enough to know those are the potential steps they have to go through. If there's other ways they can get us answers faster, we're open to that. We'd be happy to hear. The first sentence is to really ensure that all the requirements of the Wetland Conservation Act are being met. However they get there, we're fine with as a city. And if they can do it without a spring delineation, I'm okay with that. I don't know if they can or cannot. That's way above my knowledge of wetlands and how that process works. But that's why working with the TEP review panel, they may be able to speed it up.
And we worked really hard to get the city to be able to be the wetland entity. That was something that Rice Creek was not really happy about, but we worked really hard to get that, and I don't want to jeopardize it because it gives the city more flexibility, especially there are occasions when Rice Creek has been a little challenging.
And Mayor, this is Comfort Lake watershed.
But having the city, I just don't want to jeopardize that.
So in summary, we're not deleting item 14. It's
I
gonna
don't think,
stay.
I'm not in a position to say the city can delete that.
Okay,
That's my opinion on it.
and something tells me that.
But again, to be clear, staff would be happy, work with them, do whatever we can to help, but there's a process. And yes, it's late, but hopefully there's ways to keep that moving forward.
Okay. Other discussion? We'll be looking for two motions this evening. One will be for the variance request, which is for the 80%, or 81.05%. And then we will be looking for approval of the resolution. That also includes the 13 staff conditions.
Which is now 16.
We have 13 on our report.
But then you have,
So that should really, so in here, it should be 1 through 16 proposed by
Correct.
staff. Okay,
the revised resolution and then Susan's additional.
very good. Kevin?
I'm sorry, before we make any motions, I'm not sure about 16. My opinion is, I understand what you're saying, Susan, but I don't think that's up to us to put restrictions on the street for parking. I think that would be something that would be mandated based on traffic, based on challenges, if some challenges come up. I could see where we could put some restrictions on during construction, but I think after that, I don't really think we should be restricting parking. There's other businesses on that street that might need some of that, and if we put no parking on there, then they can't use it either. So I don't really think we should go down that path personally. I think if that was an issue, it would have came up from some of the other people already and been added as a condition. It's just my thought.
And if I can clarify, Susan, were you suggesting no parking on both sides of the street or just the street side adjacent to the site?
No park, what I'm looking for is that there is not parking on the street of, for instance, employee cars or the, what,
I understand.
as you're looking down the Maplewood area, all right? Many of those properties, they overflow onto the street, not onto 61, but onto that frontage road, all right? And so there are cars on the frontage road which make it difficult to pass in two directions on the frontage road. And so what I want to do is avoid that situation on 15.
So to Kevin's point, Susan, what's the difference between this and the auto dealers across on, what is that, 19th? 19th, is that correct?
I think it's 19.
19th? There's never any cars parked on 19th. They're all in off the, and I only know that because my son works on that strip, so I know if there's cars, but they're never parked out there.
As long as they can guarantee that, it's not a problem then.
Well, I don't think it'd be good for business if they stacked up all them cars out on the street, but as long as I would have somewhere to park, I'd be happy.
So then, before we go on, with anything else, I'm not opposed to the variance of 81% either. I mean, to me, that's a very small request. They've got a great stormwater management system in there. If they put impervious pavers in there, like some of our other businesses have, I don't think that 1% is gonna really hurt this or hurt us. And so I would be opposed to denying that variance. I would be much more happy just giving them that variance.
I'm okay with the impervious surface variance with the condition of the pervious pavers. I'm not in favor of granting the 5-foot variance.
Yeah,
Not asking
I'm not
for a
sure if
5-foot
that's necessary. I mean,
There is no 5-foot variance. The only variance in front of us this evening is for the percentage.
oh yeah, they're not changing that, that's correct.
And
They
they can
requested.
correct the 5-foot with their islands, so we're not gonna have an issue with that, because one thing I've learned sitting on this chair is that when it's a variance, you only get to discuss the item that's in the variance.
Right.
Which is just a percentage of lot coverage.
If I might hear that there's some favorability to the granting of a variance and reminding you that we do have some statutory requirements that we have to consider. So it would be good if the commission did make some brief findings on what the variance, what's reasonable, if there's going to be an alteration of the uniqueness of the character, reasonable, unique character.
Practical difficulties.
There's a 3-part litmus test, and I
Yeah.
always say it to the commission, and now all of a sudden I'm blanking. If what they're looking to do is reasonable, there's some sort of uniqueness, and it wouldn't alter the character of the neighborhood. Just a brief statement to each of those so that we could put that on the record would be something we would need to incorporate into the findings.
Then I'd like my fellow commissioners to help me with A,
Which one?
because it says, because of the particular physical surrounding, shape, or topographical conditions unique to the specific parcel of land involved, a practical difficulty to the owner would result if we don't grant the variance, as distinguished from a mere inconvenience.
This is on page 6 of the report.
Yes.
Read it.
Okay,
We don't have page 6. We have all one page, so it's page 1 through 77.
I'll take a
It's
stab at it,
33.
as to how I would address it. It's an auto dealership. What they're putting out there, because of the topography of the lot versus competing dealership on the other side of the highway, that's why they're adding this, is for the visibility of their dealership, because the topography of their lot puts them at a disadvantage to the dealership across the highway. And
Got the
so,
big honking signs facing the highway.
I'm just saying the display of the vehicles is a big deal in unique to a car dealership.
Continuing on with your 3 parts.
Well, I don't have all 3, so she wanted me to address.
There's
this
your
one.
Well, I
uniqueness.
believe it's reasonable because of, like you said, the fact that it is unique because of the display of cars. And I think it will certainly not alter the character of the neighborhood. I mean, it's certainly.
I agree with that.
In fact, I think it'll be a boom in the neighborhood.
I think it'll
Get a new
revive that
dealership
neighborhood.
down that street and have more business down there. I think it'd be phenomenal.
I
So
think
just for the record, I heard that the uniqueness is the need for visibility to the highway. It's reasonable because of the need to display cars along the highway, and that it would not alter the character of the neighborhood.
That's correct.
Yes.
Yes.
And partly also because of the topography of the site in relationship to the
Yes.
highway.
Right, yeah. They need to be up there so you can see it.
It's already up there. Okay.
It'll be upper there.
Just
So I-
realize that anything else that wants to come along the highway, whatever it wants to advertise, this does set us a precedent.
For impervious surface area.
For a variance based on the need for advertising.
No, this
No,
is,
no, no.
this is a variance for pervious
Surface,
surface.
but the uniqueness is that they need to advertise their product. That's what you said is the basis for waiving A, is they need to advertise their product, and that is the uniqueness.
Okay, so how does that change our signage rules? I mean, we have signage rules that are very extensive. It doesn't change the signage rules.
No, but
I understand what you're saying.
Yeah, yeah.
It may,
Yeah.
someone could try and make a
Right, no,
precedent
it's-
out of it,
it's-
and.
they're going to.
We don't have to approve it.
But we consider variances
Oh,
individually,
Yeah.
Yes.
so.
When, just for clarification, when the commission does get to making motions, I would recommend handling A first.
Yes.
Have an action on that, and then moving on to B, the site considerations. Two separate actions is one.
Yes, we'll need two separate motions. Any other discussion? Looking for a motion?
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion to approve the variance as listed, the PIDs.
You have to tell the
Okay.
reasons.
What's that?
You have to tell the reasons.
What was that?
You have to tell the reasons.
Oh, that's fine. Due to, okay, well then,
So,
Go
just,
for it.
do you mind, that there's a uniqueness, that the impervious surface area is required, given the nature of the business, that what they're looking to do is reasonable, and because the dealership requires visibility to the highway, is unique, and that it would not alter the character of the neighborhood.
well said. Yep, I knew there's no way I'd be able to remember all
I'll
that.
second that.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion on the motion? Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed?
No,
Abstentions? Motion carries. We're on to item B.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, sir.
looking now at the resolution, 10A was a condition that the site have 80% or less impervious surface. We may want to revise that to 81.05 to meet what was approved with the variance.
All righty.
Say we just remove it altogether,
No,
or adjust it
No,
to
no.
the
just,
Adjust it.
just a number.
81.
We don't want to jump into 82 or 85 or something. We can,
Yeah, that's what you're saying.
because 80% is now not really a thing.
So I would make a motion then for item B, to approve item B with a change to 10A to increase the impervious surface to 81.05.
10B.
And to change 10G to the irrigation and the landscape areas will be irrigation, I'm sorry, the irrigation and landscape areas will be installed to help ensure the plantings will survive and thrive.
I can live without 16.
And the remainder of the items up to item 15.
So we have a motion, we have a second.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion on the motion?
And that's up to and including 15,
Yes,
correct?
I'm sorry.
Thanks.
So we have a motion for the resolution 12-07-22-02 with two minor modifications to what was originally presented, so it's been corrected per the motion. So any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. So the way it's worked, first off, welcome back, Forest Lake. Ford, it's been a number of years since you've been here, so we're glad to see you guys come back. I think it'll be a great project for the other side of the freeway. The way the variance works, the Planning Commission is the final say unless someone has an objection. If they have an objection, they have 7 days to inform the city, and they also have to pay a check for $200 why they're objecting. If there is an objection, the full city council will hear the variance request at the next council.
The planning commission has ultimate approval. Only if there is appeal, it would go to the planning commission.
Right.
Will not be at the next city council just because we have to republish for a new hearing. So it gets set for a new publication date.
So if someone wants to appeal the decision,
Reach us out within the next week.
It seems unlikely.
so thank you very much. Good luck with your project. I'm sure you guys will work out all the details.
Appreciate it, thank you.
Item 6B, that's also a public hearing this evening for Volcom Electronic Billboard Zoning Text Amendment. Presenting tonight will be
Me.
Abby. It's all yours.
She doesn't want me to have all the fun,
You know, she likes to share.
I do.
and I appreciate it.
We try to share the work equally, and I am really sorry. It's always such a great view when my second screen comes up and I never remember how to change it in the meeting. Give me just a second, folks. It happens in every meeting, and I never remember.
You have to go into display.
There we go. I'm getting it. Look at that. All right, so tonight before you is a zoning text amendment to a zoning ordinance text amendment from Charles Bolcom. He is making a request for some amendments to the city's sign regulations to alter the provisions for electronic billboards. The intent of the request is to better align the city standards for these types of billboards with industry trends, local, regional standards, as well as state laws. The request is pretty specific. It's three-part. One would be to restrict the size of a billboard, changeable electronic copy sign, to 672 square feet per face, with no greater than 48, I put feet in width, but I think, yes, 48 feet in width. All of a sudden, that sounded really big to me. Allow changeable electronic copy signs to change at an interval of once every 8 seconds, opposed to the existing interval of once every 15 seconds, and to require a 2,600 foot, approximately half-mile buffer distance between these types of signs that are in excess of 200 square feet, so the billboards specifically. So Mr. Bolcom has an interest in the billboard that's located at I-35 and 11th Avenue Southwest. It is not currently owned by him, but he is looking to work in consultation and partnership with the owner of the billboard, which is not the landowner. It is a separate applicant or a separate party in this in this circumstance. If ordinance amendments would pass, it would affect all the billboards within Forest Lake. If I remember right, in my staff report, I noted that there's 11 on I-35 and 1, maybe 2 on 8. I don't remember directly off the top of my head, but all of them would be applicable.
Sorry, Abby, where is the one located that we're talking about
You see my
primarily
cursor
now?
right down, the one in the far right
Few
on the
overpass.
I-35.
Kind of a cement plant.
By
Oh,
Knife
okay.
River? Yeah.
Okay. Sorry, I missed that, thank you.
Yep, nope, that's fine.
That one already had a couple of variances in the past.
Yeah.
This one here is slightly oversized for what our current
Yeah.
billboard
Yeah,
regulations
it's
are.
already had a couple.
So when we're looking at zoning ordinance text amendments, the city code says that there isn't any one standard that you look at, but it does kind of lump some different standards together between the comprehensive plan, the zoning code, and then just general public welfare benefit. Comprehensive plan, we're looking at consistency with the comprehensive plan, and if it provides a more workable way to achieve the intent and purposes of the zoning code and the comprehensive plan. With regard to the comprehensive plan, there's no conflict with a ordinance amendment of this nature with the comprehensive plan. Comprehensive plan, as a reminder, is a big overarching document that has goals and objectives. And one of those sections of the comp plan is economic competitiveness. It's indicated in the applicant's application materials there would be just that opportunity for more intervals along the interstate or in one of these billboards. Currently, a static billboard stays static for a fairly long time. These would have an interval change rate, which can just help increase visibility along those for local businesses. And this could be viewed, Susan, as an economic competitiveness objective, meeting one of our goals.
Excuse me, Abby, before
Yeah.
you go too far, do we have any kind of billboard ordinance now? I know we got
We do.
sign ordinances, but
We do have billboard ordinance in section in our sign code.
really?
Yep,
Okay.
Could you remind me what our maximum size is now, please?
600 square feet.
Thank you.
Could current signs / billboards be changed then?
Yes.
Not only on along I-35, but anywhere in the city?
Anywhere there is a billboard, yes. Currently, we don't have,
One right on 61 here somewhere, they could change it?
we don't allow for billboards on 61. We only have them on I-35 and Highway 8. We only allow them in certain areas of the city. Oh, Winnick does have one. It is a legal non-conforming.
Right, so that means
Sign.
that he could potentially change that to
That
a
is
sign
correct.
like this, if we approve this.
Currently, right now, our code doesn't restrict somebody from changing their billboards to electronic signs. It's kind of almost like a loophole in the code.
Oh.
I can't say loophole, I don't like to use the word loophole, but it's, if you read just strict definitions of the code and the application of the code, it's kind of one of those things that staff believes you could have an electronic billboard today.
Interesting.
So then we also looked just for the zoning code consistency, extent to which the amendment's consistent with overall structure of the zoning code. The amendment corrects any errors or omissions, add clarification, extent to which the proposed amendment creates nonconformities. With regard to the zoning code, as I just mentioned, the sign code is not well integrated. Part of this has to be that the sign code has not been reviewed in 10 years. So the section on changeable interface signs, and I forget the name of them, electronic signs, let's just say that. The section on billboards, the city just has not revisited this in a very long time, and these, even when these ordinance amendments have been done, I wouldn't say that the city has been the best at cross-comparing those ordinance amendments with other sections of the sign code to see how they mesh better and not necessarily create these gaps that exist. The opportunity right now that the city has is to strengthen this code section specific to billboards, electronic signage, and as recommended by our legal counsel, that we would actually do that as part of Mr. Bolcom's text amendment to look at a city comprehensive electronic billboard ordinance. General public benefit, whether or not it would benefit the residents as a whole, not just the applicant, owners, neighbors, that sort of thing, and then a relative gain to the public compared to a hardship imposed on the applicant. There is general public benefit, as I noted, we do have these along the city of Forest Lake, the metro area has these along the I-35 corridor. We do have them directly across. Columbus does allow them. There is a public benefit in being just consistent with our regional partners or our regional neighbors in allowing for improvements in our community. Additionally, it just does allow for greater visibility for some of what I would say some of those maybe smaller scale businesses that might not buy a billboard or rent a you don't buy a billboard, lease a billboard for a month or weeks or whatever. This helps reduce the cost actually to advertise in this arena. So our findings and recommendation in the staff report is there's no conflicts with the comprehensive plan really in the zoning code, but there are a lot of inconsistencies and gaps in the sign code, and there's a number of public policy questions that need to be discussed as part of this. So therefore, staff's recommendation would be to table consideration of this zoning text amendment and direct staff to work with our legal counsel to draft a more comprehensive ordinance that would better fill in those gaps and address the public policy. So what staff notes in the report is a few things that the Planning Commission might want to discuss. Currently, where we have billboards, and are there any areas where we'd want to limit them? The number of billboards in each I-35 and Highway 8 corridors, and if we imposed buffer limits, that would inherently limit the number that we could have in our community. Would that be, does the commission want to be more or less restrictive than what is proposed? Limiting the total allowance per structure. So right now, the way the city code reads is a two-sided sign is only one side if each side is identical. But with an electronic sign, if you had two separate messages on each side, technically that is two signs. And if we imposed a buffer distance, would you really be able to have those two? That's kind of some of those weird little nuances in our code where we'd be okay with the back-to-back. And then lastly, we don't allow for billboards greater than 600 square feet in total size, though variances have been approved. Would it be favorable to allowing for a greater size? I'm going to stop there. The applicant, Charles Bolcom, is here tonight to introduce himself. He is aware of our general counsel or legal counsel's desire to work with what he has proposed and to create a more comprehensive ordinance. Based on the kind of feedback from the commission tonight, we will also be heading back to the city, going to the city council to ask some of these very specific questions as well before we'd bring that ordinance back to you. I don't believe you'd actually hear this ordinance until late January, just given the holidays, given our meeting schedules and that sort of thing. But I encourage you to ask Mr. Bolcom or myself any questions. I don't know that there's anybody else online, but I'm here if you have any questions for me.
Let's start with any questions for staff. Hearing none. Sir, I ask you to please come up and state your name and address for the record, please.
You bet. Good evening, Commissioner. I'm Chuck Bolcom. I live at 6287 West Shadow Lake Drive in Lino Lakes, and I'm excited to be here tonight and appreciate your time. So I'm grateful for the opportunity. Very much appreciate Abby and Ken and staff's work on this. I think Abby described it to me a couple of months ago. Her job was to guide, and not advocate, but just show the process. And so I've tried to follow that process, and I'm grateful for that. Chair Gerard and Commissioners, thank you for looking at the information that I provided prior to the meeting. I'm an owner of a media advertising business where across my career and currently I work with local, regional, and national advertisers to really unlock what they want to try and get done through different kinds of advertising. And so the project that I'm focused on, and so maybe just a little bit of background, because I think it might answer a couple of the questions that were raised. So the billboard that I'm looking at is on 11th Avenue. That billboard is owned by a local business owner that's been in the community for a long time, Robert McCullough. I have a lease with Mr. McCullough to put two digital faces on that billboard, and that's a long-term lease, and I've put that lease together with him, then with the goal of following the current law and any law changes that might happen around the ordinance. And so as I started down this process, the main thing I was focused on, Chair Gerard, was your current law does allow for what this long name, Abby, I'm going to try and get it right, electronic changeable copy sign. It is in the ordinance, and it's in a couple of different places in the sign ordinance. And in both places, what I noted was there was an interval change, meaning that ad couldn't change any more rapidly than 15 seconds. And that's really the journey I started on as I approached the city a couple of months ago to look at a discussion around that. And so for the commissioners, what I was trying to do was have the city think about the way that these signs over the last 15 years in hundreds of municipalities in really every state have been treated. And what's happened is it's gone to somewhere around an industry standard around turning every 8 seconds. And so that's what I started out to kind of address. As I worked with staff, one of the things that came up was, we've got these number of boards on Highway 35. Would the city want all 9 of those boards to be digitized? And so it was not my original plan to suggest any sort of buffer between signs, but I added that to my text amendment because I was thinking about the notion of do you want to have a situation, and this isn't meant to be funny, but kind of Times Square out on 35W, right? Because one of the concerns in going from 15 seconds to 8 seconds is some notion of driver safety, right, which has been disproved, and it's a very good topic, and it is an important topic. And I provided some studies in the research I provided to kind of address that. And then as I finished up my text amendment, I realized that the city size was 600 square feet. And so Commissioner Young, most standard signs that they make, whether they're analog signs, they're 14 high by 48. And if you look at all those signs out on 35, they look like they're 14 by 48s. And I didn't realize that that sign wasn't a 14 by 48 until I was really finishing up my permit request. And so I added to my text amendment just a suggestion that the industry standard is really this 14 by 48. It really benefits the acquisition of technology that's already built for that. It's an industry standard. It's kind of like 2x4s are the same size in every construction project or engineering project. That 14 by 48 is kind of a standard for the advertising industry. So an advertiser is creating ads for Forest Lake. They're creating the same size for other places in the metro. And so if, as an advertising outlet, if I had something different, 12 by 48, it might be something that people would not then invest in from an advertising standpoint. So my text amendment, Abby, sorry that was so long, but my text amendment grew a little bit from my original notion of you already allow electronic copy sign changes. You already allow those signs. My main goal was to look at the difference between 15 seconds and 8 seconds, which is true in 98% of the digital billboards in the state of Minnesota are at 8 seconds, and the MnDOT's laws actually allow 6 seconds. And so I picked that number that other billboard companies use. All the national providers are at 8 seconds. So that is a little bit more context. Commissioner Miller, I think that the sign on, that we can see here from the building that's across the lot, I think Abby or Kim may have said that's a non-conforming sign.
Yes, that is correct.
Yeah, and so on Minnesota highways, and I'm not a legal expert on this, but I believe in talking to the Twin Cities MnDOT advertising expert, Jeff Constant, the comment he made to me when I talked to him about this sign out on 35, he said, analog signs, vinyl signs, can be changed to digital signs if they're conforming signs. And so that's just a note as you think about the sign on 61. If that is in fact a non-conforming sign, that sign, depending on what you do with the ordinance, may not be able to be changed. So I had a couple of comments I wanted to make in terms of why I'm excited about the benefits to advertisers, the city of Forest Lake. I didn't plan on commenting on all of that background, but I have about 90 seconds of 3 benefits I think are good for the city. But Commissioner? You know, I'm excited. I'm excited as a business owner and the opportunity I put together with this existing sign. My goal is to go from 2 vinyl signs, leverage technology to create something bigger in terms of number of advertisers that can participate from a messaging standpoint out on 35W with just a great amount of traffic. The way in which this gets done, though, is by thinking first about the community good and the community benefit and how to do that so it serves the community. And so I think there are 3 primary wins here and benefits. The first one is I believe it's going to drive economic development and business development because you're going to go from these 2 static advertisers, which is awesome, right? You're going to go to anywhere from 16 to 25 advertisers in any particular month. They're going to be able to take advantage of all that great traffic out on Highway 35. There's about 75,000 cars a day that travel that road. And a digital sign out on 35 is just going to open up a lot of opportunity for lots of different kinds of businesses. And tonight we had 2 examples of that. Culver's, local business, small businessman. You've got this Ford dealership going in there. I think automotive, marine, camper, great category. Insurance is a great category. You can see a services provider like the funeral home that's on there. I was with a business owner on Friday night that owns a new business, med spa, that you guys have probably approved. A business owner like that suddenly gets a chance to think about advertising differently. You know, what's happened over the last 15 years is the newspaper has kind of decelerated and direct mail is decelerated from a local business standpoint. Tons of digital opportunities are on social media. Digital billboard out on 35 is going to open the eyes to a lot of people. People are going to get off the highway. We're going to drive tax revenue. It's going to be an opportunity for more people to get involved. Public service. So I'm a second-generation broadcaster. My dad was in the TV business, and the thing I learned from him was that if you have a license to operate a radio station, or if you have a charter to own a cable franchise in a city, or if you're a local broadcaster, some of that inventory, some of that good needs to come back to the community members. And I think the same way about opening up, going from analog to a digital sign. Now there's lots of inventory to tell lots of stories. And one of the things that the billboard community has done with digital billboards is they offer some of that inventory for the public good. So whether it's Amber Alerts, or whether it's automated National Weather Service warnings, whether it's working with the fire and the police safety here around other safety messages. You talk about needing to talk to the community about irrigation or about recycling. Now you've got an outlet to do that. You've got a school system that's got messages. So you should consider putting into your ordinance, like White Bear Lake has and Blaine has and Van Ness Heights has, some sort of requirement around the public good. And so as an owner, I think that's just the way you have to roll, right? And so that's the second good benefit. The third piece is awareness. So your citizens are going to benefit because they're just going to be aware more. They're going to see inventory from the city, but they're going to see inventory that's there around ad messages from dozens of different kinds of businesses, about events, about festivals. They're going to know about the new fuel service down the road at Love, so they're going to have a benefit to participate in that. And so it's, I think, a great messaging vehicle. So those are really 3 of the great benefits that I see. My main goal in writing the text amendment was to go from 15 to 8 seconds. So there weren't 4 advertising positions, but there were 8 advertising positions every 64 seconds. And if that's part of the change that you make to the ordinance, then you're going to have an opportunity, I think, to have the public good and business development really benefit from that. And so that is, those are my primary comments around the benefits. Chair Gerard, I think that the other piece is, I mean, I'm a local business person, right? And the only way all of that comes true is if you show up. And so the way that you show up is you're going to go call on all of those local businesses. You're going to set up a system for the city to use that inventory. And that's probably going to be a crawl, walk, run, because you don't have lots of people running around ready to create ads to run on a digital billboard. So it's really about, as I succeed, hopefully, in getting this sign permit, it's really on my responsibility to put some sort of process in place that the city can use that inventory. And then it will be a notion of continuous improvement over the coming years where we get better and better at telling the stories that you want to tell. And so I think just, you don't need to hear about my commitment to business, but I think a local independent business calling on local businesses and learning about their business issues and then unlocking that into more inventory is really the vision I have for this business. So there's no one else here to comment, or maybe there is, but I'm grateful for the opportunity, and I think at 9 o'clock at night, with all of us being here for a couple hours, I had a education and process here, and so it helped me a lot. And those are the comments I have, but I'm really grateful to be here.
Okay, if you could just hold on a little bit there, Chuck. Questions for the applicant? Kevin?
Wherever you'd like to start.
I got everybody here.
All right.
Kevin, you can start.
All right, Mr. Volcom, you mentioned a number of other cities that, with the electronic billboards. I'm guessing you probably worked with them. Can you tell us what you see in other cities in terms of that timing between ads? Is it
Yeah.
closer to the 8, or is it 10? Is it 12? Is it 20? What is your experience?
Commissioner Miller, and you can look at a good guide is the ordinances themselves, right? And so one of the things I did was I pulled a half a dozen ordinances that I supplied to the planning staff, and the majority of those were at 8 seconds.
And then a follow-up question is, do any of these cities have restrictions that you're aware of in terms of distance between these electronic signs? Or can you have 10 in a row?
Thank you. So probably 70% of the ordinances I pulled had some notion of distance between the billboards. And the distance was anywhere from 2,200 feet. Columbus is 3,750 feet. And so I think they're putting that distance in so they don't have a congestion of digital signs.
And then I have just one last question. You mentioned, which was, I thought was a great suggestion about information regarding public good, Amber Alerts type things like that. So as a business owner, and you're selling advertising space, if there were things like Amber Alerts or tornado warnings, things like that, what types of things do you see as a business owner, you putting on those billboards for public good?
Very good. So this is now not a new industry, right? This industry is about 15 years old. Regardless of the manufacturer that I buy this technology from, they all provide instant feeds into the billboard. That if there's an Amber Alert, that sign is just taken over by that warning. Some of us might know, and I can't even explain what an RSS feed is, so I'll just go with it. But also from a National Weather Service standpoint, there's a way with an RSS feed with the watch fire billboards I'm going to invest in for severe weather warnings to hit that board as well, which is really interesting, I think. You can think about summertime, that road is clogged with folks on a Sunday afternoon, the ability to warn people if that's the case. And so it's an electronic, automatic takeover of the billboard.
Thank you.
Chair Gerard, if I might just follow up for Commissioner Miller's sake. So there are, maybe you could almost kind of think of the community service broadcasting in two separate buckets. One are emergency services, and those emergency services by, I believe, state law will just dictate the feed. Then what the applicant is mentioning too is the other bucket where some cities will indicate that a certain number of intervals or hours per month or whatever may be dedicated to the community public service. So we could do arts in the park or youth football or whatever that may be. And those are kind of two separate things. And a lot of ordinances definitely call out them separately.
Thank you. Justin?
I was just curious what you've seen, like MnDOT studies from a safety perspective. Like, let's just say if the billboards were changing, every 6 as they permit. 35, you've got a nice straightaway, and you've got a lot of changeover happening, within a 6-second interval with all those billboards. Is there any studies on distraction? And, because if one switches over, I can't help but look at it. It just, your eye just goes right to it. And especially when you've got 35W and E converging there, you do have billboards there, there's going to be a lot of that turnover, quicker turnover. I'm just wondering what you've seen.
Commissioner, very good question. So a series of studies, even starting back in 2007 and 2009, and then updated, I think, in 2014 by the U.S. Transportation Office, pretty much said that the changing of those digital signs, and they looked at regular signs and they looked at other distractions, did not hit a place where they considered digital advertising signs impacting distracted driving. So I've supplied 3 or 4 of those studies. There's a New Mexico study that's a very good study, a pretty lengthy study that addressed the same thing. And for all of those studies, they fell under any sort of warning sign around the digital signs impacting drivers from a distraction standpoint. I think that one of the reasons I wanted to settle at 8 was, even though the MnDOT is 6, there is not a MnDOT study that I've provided because I don't think MnDOT has done a study, but they are at 6 seconds. My goal was to be at 8 seconds, was not to push that, right, and to be more thoughtful about it, but also to conform in some ways with what the 2 or 3 largest billboard companies in the country use in thousands of cities, and that is 8 seconds. And so it's an issue that's been studied over and over and over, and there seems to be an allowance from municipalities all over the country to understand that the research says it's not an impact from a distracted driver standpoint.
Okay. And just to follow up, in the other communities that you've looked at, do you see that the digital signs are all changing over, or, like toward the cities where there's probably a little bit more money, I guess, let's say, there's people who prefer the analog just because they say, hey, I want to be on that 100% of the time. I don't want to go digital. I like the analog.
So great, very, very, very good question. I think it comes down to the individual business owner. So maybe I'll just give 2 or 3 quick examples. Example, Clear Channel and Outfront, the 2 largest global billboard companies, they really like to have a mix of inventory, right? They love that they have all this digital inventory because it gives them some of these same benefits, but they love that they have great positions where they have static boards because there are advertisers who just want to be there for a dozen months, right? And so that's one piece of that. They love the mix of inventory. The second piece is, from a revenue standpoint, if they had all digital signs, they would be flooded with so much inventory that their yield would be driven down, and it wouldn't benefit them to have all digital signs. So that's kind of an economic piece of that answer. And then there are some billboard owners. A great billboard owner here in the state of Minnesota and Wisconsin, Schubert Hoy. Schubert is on Highway 35 near this location that I'm working on. They have 800-900 faces and no digital faces, and that's a clear business decision, I think. I'm making this up, right? But I think that it's a clear business decision on their part that they want to be in the analog business and they don't see the benefit of managing all of that extra inventory. Because I think if they had a different mindset, I think Schubert Hoy could have 50 digital locations across the 2 states. And so it's a business reason, it's an inventory reason, and it's that there are still a lot of advertisers that want static signs.
I just
that
thought
was a long answer, sorry. Commissioner. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I just thought too, from a marketing standpoint, I don't know if businesses still do this, but years ago, how they would get very creative and go outside the margins of the billboard themselves, and why you couldn't probably at this point at the time couldn't do that with digital, but may still want to have the analog for that reason.
Digital's going to bring in some other creative things that you can't do on a color and different things in terms of the ad unit itself. But you're exactly right. That colossal ability to put the top of the Viking helmet off the sign, not available on the sign that I'm going to hopefully have.
Thank you.
Susan?
Are you envisioning that all the signs on 35 would go to digital? As we write our ordinance, would we allow all of them to be digital?
The applicant is actually proposing approximately half-mile buffer between. So no, it would not be that all of them would be allowed to be digital. That it would be at most 3 along I-35 and 1 along Highway 8. Now, in consultation with our legal counsel, she's recommended the city discuss the policy of, maybe it is only those along I-35 that would be allowed to be digital versus any other ones within the community, as already discussed. Some communities allow for a much smaller buffer distance. Some have much greater. So those are some of those policy-based conversations that we'd have to have.
Does anybody else remember the reporter we had, Mark? I forget, last name started with an N, who did several articles about billboards along 35. When I read this, I looked at one of the benefits is for local businesses, and so just between the split and 97, there's 19 billboards on both sides of the highway, and 3 of those have something local. Everything else is Treasure Island, or there's 2 for the Quick Trip that's farther up the road for truckers. The 3 are Norman Quack's, the Leela sign, and then we're hiring for the folks on Fenway.
Didn't LeGrand have something too?
Not one I saw when I looked the other night. They used to have one, but I think that one is now Leela. That one has changed to Leela. So typically, I don't see a local benefit. However, listening to you tonight, if you were looking at a percentage that had to be for community benefit, I think that the radio requirement for community benefit has been lifted by the Federal Communications Commission. But if you were going to recommend a percentage for us to put in the ordinance that would be local benefit, what would you recommend that percentage be?
Commissioner Young, I'll give you a suggestion on that. I think that you cited some local businesses that are active on those signs. On the sign that I'm have this agreement to lease with, there are 2 local advertisers on there. As you go to the split and you see all of those signs as you come up, all of those signs are owned by great companies out front and Clear Channel that have very large sales staffs, right? But they're not on the ground calling on local communities. They're not in Washington County calling on businesses. And so the mix, I think the mix can be different, right? And I think the mix is different because I'm going to call on all of those businesses. So I think that's a difference. It doesn't mean that if Clear Channel was sitting here with this text amendment, you shouldn't allow it. It's got to be good law, right? So I'm not saying that. But I think the mix will be different because of the way that I'm going to operate the business and call on these folks. I think, if Menards is a local business and Quick Trip is a local business and those auto dealers are local businesses, there's a very good chance those folks are going to be involved. I think State Farm, the independent insurance agency that's in the building on the property where this board is, those are advertisers that also use digital billboards. Some of the research I did as I looked at safety and I looked at some of these different things about business development, the National Association of Outdoor Advertising Companies suggests that 60 to 70% of the ads typically on these digital billboards end up being for local businesses, right? And so I'm just looking at kind of that measure. I want to separate the notion of local businesses and some regional businesses being on those signs, and then to get to your question of how much inventory do we want to provide for the city to use for the public good, right? Which is a different piece of this. I think from a sign ordinance standpoint, I think you can drive the amount of inventory that should come for the public good, that the operator, whether it's me or someone else, is providing it for safety and then other community benefit. I think it's hard to drive a notion of a percentage of local ads because there will be things mixed into that. One of the things will be, I'm going to call on all of those folks and I'm going to bring them lots of ideas, and then I've got to have people participate, right, from an investment standpoint. And so, Commissioner Young, that might fluctuate depending on when, the part of the year, right? I will call on some other buckets of folks. As a business owner, I'll call on Minneapolis ad agencies. It might be advertising a regional business like the Vikings or the Twins or the Wild, right? So I will call on those companies as well. And so there will be a mix of advertising, but I think a good, strong share of the advertising will be local businesses. In other outdoor assets I've handled in the last decade, Menards and Quick Trip were my biggest advertisers.
But in terms of community benefit,
Right.
saying selfishly the Rotary Plunge, or the football team is heading to sectionals, or good community benefit things, Arts in the Park. What percentage would you recommend on either a semi-annual or monthly or yearly benefit be a community benefit?
Thank you, very good question. I think I'd love in the next month to work with staff on that. And let me share a couple ideas with you. One of the ordinances that I provided to staff was the White Bear Lake ordinance. And they have a frequency of like 2,800 ads a month, in 8-second ads. Right? And I looked at it, I did the math on that actually before I came over tonight, and I thought, well, that's not very much. That's not very much inventory, right? And so, Commissioner Young, I think it's about finding looking at some of this other stuff, and then me as helping you craft that is, I think I want to lean beyond maybe what some of these other cities have done and make sure there's enough inventory to tell stories, consistently, regardless of what the idea might be. It might be the Rotary, it might be city initiatives, it might be the school council. So I think I want to give you an answer on that. There are 8 turns, right? There are 8 turns every 64 seconds. You know, does that mean that, you know, is it 1 in every 24 turns? Is it 1 in every 36? It's creating a bucket of inventory that the city can use. And I do think about it from a continuous improvement standpoint. One of the things staff said was, public good, you're gonna have this inventory ready for us to use. We're a small staff. Like, how are we gonna get that done? So I think it's about creating a plan, Chair Gerard, where you say to the city, let's get started in this way. Let's keep getting better and better at it. And so that in the coming years, more and more people understand how to use it. And then the Rotary might use it this year, and then next year they use it in an even greater way because we've got a way to improve on that. So, not meaning not to give an answer. I think you work with the planning team to say what's the right amount of inventory that you think you want to put in a new sign ordinance. And I think it should be appropriate with the spirit I have around, if you have a license with the community and the community gives you that license and you have an advertising and a voice to the community, then you got to be ready to support the community with it. So I'm not afraid of that, and I think we should do it.
And I appreciate that you have that bent, and I greatly appreciate that. I can't guarantee that you will always be the lessee for these signs, and so that's why we really need to figure out what the ordinance should be, not, because I can't depend on your goodwill for the next 60 years.
Commissioner Kubel, can I say one other thing to what Commissioner Young just said? You know, I know, so here's this, you know, you're right, I have the right spirit around giving back. I mean, I grew up in the right household around an FCC license, and I understood that, and that's the way I built my broadcast career. And so I came into that suggesting that, and then I was like, the suggestion was, be careful with that, because it might feel like you're even like offering that to the city to get this done, right? And so now I love that we're here talking about you potentially upgrading the sign ordinance and you mandating it in the right way, so that if it's not me, the next owner has to bring the public good with it. So I'm glad that we're talking about this tonight versus waiting, and maybe it comes up at a city council meeting. So,
1 second.
Commissioner, sorry about that.
Did you have something, Abby?
No, I was just gonna kind of mention what Chuck had mentioned, is most cities are dictating that requirement. They're writing it right in, and that it would be applicable to all future users, be it on this sign or this future sign, future owners. So
I like it.
Geneva?
Okay, so the ads themselves, it's one thing to display them, but it's another to make them.
Right.
So if you offer something to the city, you know, a percentage of time or space or whatever, then is there like a development team that would help the city craft the ad so it really shows up nice on these billboards? Because that's half the battle.
Yeah. Commissioner, so I think in this process, right, so I'm one business owner, right, and so the way this, and I want stuff to look good, you know, I want you to look good, I want the stuff to look good, and I want it to be simple, right? And so here are some thoughts. One is to create some really good templates so that it's easier, because the city does have some graphic design resources. So probably, if I have this sign permit granted, one of the first things we need to put, you know, I want to go out and sell a bunch of advertising, but I got to put a plan in place with you to unlock that messaging capability. So I think and I'm just brainstorming here. I'd probably go out on my dime and I'd create some templates, right? And then the templates would be ready to drop things in, and then probably hand those to you so that it's fluid and it's easy to do, right? And then offer some creative capabilities moving forward just to make sure stuff looks right. It does add some complication and some cost on the business owner if I then need to pay to have a graphic designer create those. I think what I'd probably do is I'd put a kit of a bunch of templates together. I don't mean to go on, but I think it's maybe a working session with the 6 or 8 people in the city are going to tap into that. We put a plan together. I think crawl is, you know, we look at the first 12 months, the first 12 months of this and say, let's put a map together, because it's about using the inventory, right? And so put a map together, and then people will get used to it, and then other community leaders, maybe the Rotary board didn't know about it the first year, and then they see somebody using it, and that's the way the inventory is going to get used. The other thing I think, you know, right down the road in Vadnais Heights, on the right-hand side, there's a nice board there, and I go by there a lot. And Vadnais Heights just has a really good Vadnais Heights promo, you know, as good as it sounds. And so using some of the inventory consistently just for that, you know what it does? People going north for the weekend, they may not even know where Forest Lake is. And now suddenly, they see that branding of Forest Lake. So it doesn't need to be the Rotary Club event. It can be a commissioner just putting together some really good ads at the very beginning to promote the city and what the city stands for. And so I've always got inventory to run, if you will. So we're not waiting for point solutions around a particular thing. You know, that's a meeting with the, I'm losing my train of thought here, the school superintendent. It's a meeting with him or her to say, here's the possibilities. How do you want to, you know, do you want to get in on this? So that's the way I think you handle that. But me being your agency, probably tougher. But creating templates and a real plan around how to use it is probably something Commissioner Young, you know, in 10 years when I'm gone, it'd be hard to get that next group to be the creative agency for the city,
Okay.
probably. Sorry about that.
Are most of the billboards on 35W, or can there be billboards in lesser speed routes?
So there's one along I-35W, there's one along Highway 8, which is a lesser speed, and then as reminded, there is one just along Highway 61 that is also a lower speed. New billboards are only allowed adjacent to Highway 8 or I-35.
Okay.
But adjacent to specific zoning districts in one of those corridors.
Okay.
And just, I don't mean to correct you, Chuck, but everyone knows where Forest Lake is when they're going north, because where the freeway
Yeah,
goes
sorry
from
about that.
3 lanes to 2 lanes. That's why they know where it
The
is.
Forest Lake split.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I just look at the logo, you know, I see that Vadnais Heights promotion, and you know, I'm an advertising guy. It's repetition, it's awareness, and Commissioner Kubel, I think, you know, because I've studied your ordinance, you allow them on 35 and 8, and that map that Abby showed, there's 11 or 12 billboards. There's just one on 8, and the balance are either north of that interchange where Culver's is, or just south of there, kind of where the Ford dealership is, and then the board that I have the lease on is the first board coming into the city.
Does the cost of the ad like become less because more people have access to the sign? So it now becomes more affordable to get that 8 seconds every so often?
Yeah. Very, very good question. So the investment for each of those 6 or 8 spots, and I say 6 or 8 because you never sell out all your inventory, right? And so my pro forma is around, I'll probably sell 75% of the ads at any one time. The ad cost for that position is about the same what vinyl is today if you were to do it over a month's period of time. There's a lot of different things happen now because the inventory is different, right? You could have people that say, I want to be there for a dozen months. You could have people there for a shorter period of time. But because you've got inventory every day and you've got inventory up and down the day, and you can use the inventory scheduling technology to schedule people in different ways. I have the ability to work with someone that only wants to be there for 2 or 3 days a week, and then their investment is going to be lower than what a typical advertising campaign might be today. Someone that wants to be there 12 months a year and they want one of those 8 spots, it's going to be a similar cost to what a vinyl position is today, similar to what that advertiser invests in. The benefit of the digital board from the advertiser standpoint is this advertiser that has that advertiser up there 12 months a year, now they can change that copy whenever they want. There's no need to print vinyl and have added costs. They send me a file and we can adjust that messaging and that advertising all of the time. And so it just offers up a lot of other benefits. And so that is some sense of pricing and what happens from a pricing standpoint. So what I like to say is when you go from one advertiser to 8 to 15 advertisers on that one display, it offers all kinds of different entry points in terms of time and investment. And that's really how you get to a lot of people participating and being able to do different kinds of messaging. And so digital technology, inventory management tools that are inherent to the industry, and then just calling on a lot of people and knowing what they want to get done. Meaning, I only want to be there because I'm having a sale on Saturday, and I only need to be there for these days, or whatever that might look like. Or I only want to be there in morning drive time because I have a coffee business that's right off the highway, and that's when I'm only open. So that, again, takes, that's where the work comes in terms of being in front of people and finding out how to solve those problems.
Talk to me a little bit about the signs themselves and the brightness. Driving over here, I was on 61. It wasn't a billboard, but it was one of the local signs. And some of these billboards, though, and this sign, are blinding when you go by them at night. What are the rules behind how bright they can be?
If you don't mind, Chuck, we have the right to dictate the brightness level by lumens. And so that is something that we would be incorporating into our ordinance. Not all city ordinances do address the light and the light spread or shed, and that is something that we've already started to explore.
And we don't have that currently, so they can put it as bright as they want currently?
With our changeable copy signs, I'm not sure. I'd have to double check to see, but I wouldn't imagine we would have thought of that 10 years ago.
And we would be looking to change something not only here, but for the changeable signs would affect possibly, there could be separations, but they may be the same.
Yes, ideally, when it comes to some of those baseline standards like lumens and brightness and intensity, we would want them the same. Maybe even more restrictive if it was adjacent to a residential neighborhood or, that sort of thing. Those are things that we are exploring because.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, Abby, do you mind if I comment on that?
No, not at all.
So I think as the staff works on that, they'll bring you a recommendation, and the recommendation will be based on what other cities have found in terms of the maximum foot candles that it should be lit up in the evening. So my manufacturer, it's a company called Watchfire. They're in Danville, Illinois. It's a North American manufacturer. It's very similar to Formetco in the Dakotas. Great, great companies. Years and years of understanding what needs to happen when the sun goes down in terms of automatically dimming those sites, Chair Gerard, so that it goes within whatever the city sets up as a foot candle maximum. For instance, White Bear Lake has a maximum foot candle of 0.3, and that's in the evening. And the reason they did that was they understood kind of how these signs work probably, right? And they put that in so that they could pay attention to the community and year-round brightness.
Thank you. Susan?
Abby, are you looking to have all of our signs in the city go to the 672 square feet? And are you looking at all of our signs to be able to be digital signs? I'm just worried, I'm thinking about, because again, as I drove up, it didn't look like all the signs were the same size. So are you looking at all of, when you craft the sign ordinance, that every billboard allowed could be digital, and that every billboard allowed would be 672.
So the request that's before you would be allowing for digital signage, digital billboards up to 672 with a distance separation of a half mile. That is what the applicant has requested. Staff hasn't started to really explore what that means for the city in terms of some sort of more comprehensive ordinance. Tonight's the first discussion of some of those policy-based things, which is why this is great dialogue. I think all of the questions for the applicant, and I'm sure we could kind of keep talking, and I'm not sure here what happened to my stuff. I unplugged for a second, and that's what I get when I unplug for a second.
Screen.
Would you mind? Thank you. Oh, geez.
So with the half-mile limitation, it's gonna be first come, first serve. Whoever gets their electronic sign up there first, the next guy's screwed because he's within a half mile.
That's the recommendation by the.
No, I
applicant,
understand
you
that,
know.
but I mean, that's something that
Yeah, that's
maybe with
partially
the
true, though,
with
yeah.
the interval, okay, maybe allow them all to be electronic, but now the interval has to be 15 seconds or 20 seconds. I'm just saying, this is still in the all discussion.
Right.
But I don't know that, going with the half mile, that's what it sets up. It sets up, if his goes electronic, that next person, if they're not a half mile down, they never get to be electronic.
Right, but I think that we're also looking at distances between any kind of billboard,
Oh,
not just kind of electronic.
No,
Well,
we
they
would-
might
Quite
already
frankly,
be
no.
less than
Yeah.
that. They might
No,
be
we're
less than
not
that, right?
looking at revamping our entire billboard ordinance. We would be looking at the electronic billboard, having a section on that. We certainly could start walking down the billboard route, but I don't know that that's necessarily the most fair to the applicant, given the fact that they have initiated this process.
And I admit, I'm a fan of the Monkey Wrench Gang. I'm not a billboard fan. I'm just not. But I accept that they exist, and I accept that there are reasons for them to exist, as long as there's some distance between them. And
So you're not a fan of wall drugs starting as soon as you get on 90
Hell no.
west?
Or
Boy, we should do that
Bucky's
for
down in
Forest Lake.
Texas.
Yeah. Kevin?
I have a question. I've always wondered about the troubleshooting of the billboards. So, I mean, if I'm going down 35W, there's always a billboard that's either blinking or there's some grid that's down. How does that get worked out?
Very good. Commissioner, so that, those digital billboards have surveillance, so they're plugged into a network, so not only am I aware of it, but the manufacturer is aware of whether or not the board is operating properly. And so it's a matter of being aware of that and then being able to correct that. And I think there's even some things in the current ordinance around electronic copy signs that if they're not operating correctly, it's gotta be solved within a certain amount of time, and so you'll continue to bring that forward. I've not operated one of these digital billboards yet, and so it's really that surveillance and that troubleshooting, and then being able to tap into the right people to get out there and adjust whatever needs to be adjusted.
Okay. I was also curious, and you probably don't have the answer for it, but just what of that troubleshooting can be done remotely versus, sending someone actually physically out there and, I just always wondered that. So.
Yeah, I think Commissioner Brink, I think it's a mix of both. It's a mix of both. The firm that I'm gonna buy make this pretty significant investment with complete trust that they know, they know the process, they know how to troubleshoot, they know how to get the boards up and running.
Kevin?
I was just curious, the sign that you're looking at, what is the current size of that sign?
Thank you. It's, Commissioner, I thought it was this standard size, 14 by 48. It's smaller than that because your ordinance is 600 feet. So it's I think it's rated 600 feet. It's like 12 by 48.
Okay, and Abby, then that would mean all those billboards in Forest Lake along 35 are that same size, under 600 square feet?
I can't guarantee that. I don't know when they were permitted based on the ordinance, and we're not going out and measuring those after they're permitted.
We're not enforcing it, is what you're saying, right?
Well, I mean,
Because it's supposed to be,
we don't go out and inspect signs. We
Right.
do this based on, here's your permit, you say it's 600
so
square
you're
feet.
saying the 14 by 40 is pretty much an industry standard?
It is, yeah. And Commissioner Miller, I didn't discover the 600 feet until I was at the very end.
Oh, I
And some would say, Chuck, you should have looked at that closer. And so then I just tried to make a suggestion. If I buy that industry technology from Watchfire, that's the size they make it in. In your packet, in the last PowerPoint slide, I show kind of that slide you just saw. And so, in my instance, that sign, if I put a digital sign there, Commissioner Young, that sign will be no higher. It will be no wider. The sign will actually, the brown sheathing on the, is that a word, sheathing?
Yep.
The brown piece of that would be covered with another 1.5 foot of
Just keep running my
a
cursor.
digital sign.
Yep.
Commissioner Miller, the other signs that are out there from Schubert Hawaii and Clear Channel and out front, yeah, I started to look at those more in the last 3 weeks as I discovered that, and they're 48 And they look like they're 14, but they're probably 12, because those business people are probably following the ordinance.
Completely. Everyone follows the rules here.
Yes. we
That's
know
right.
that.
Yeah, thank you, too much information.
Thank you for reinforcing
Yeah,
that.
Abby wishes the applicant would talk less, so, thank you for your time tonight.
Other questions?
Good information.
This is a public hearing,
It is a public hearing.
so we ask anyone who would like to speak to this application to please step up to the lectern, state your name and address for the record, spend a couple minutes giving us your thoughts on this application. Once we had heard from everyone, we will close the public hearing and bring it back for further discussion and a motion for the commission. So we will open the public hearing at 9:35 PM. Does anyone wish to speak to this application?
Is that any onliners?
I have
Anybody
no
else?
one,
No one online? No emails to be read in?
no emails.
Well, since it's already 9:35, we will close the public hearing at 9:35. Having heard from, having no one else in the room and no one online. Bring it back to the commission. Per the, I'll remind the commission that when we're all said and done, when we're looking for a motion, we're looking to table this. Let me help you out there, as they say. So further discussion, or are we good?
There are just a couple policy-based points that I'd like the commission's input on. I obviously need to also ask the city council, your advisory body to the city council. I definitely heard that there would probably not be interest for an electronic billboard along the 61 corridor if there was one there. What about that Highway 8 corridor? There is only one along there. Everyone's fine with both of the interstate and Highway 8, but probably not Highway
Would
61?
start approximately where that billboard is now, just north of the bus garage and everything west.
I'm sorry.
Yeah,
So-
because we,
So-
yeah, there's really not much more to the city there. You end up in Wyoming.
Yeah, so,
There's really nothing much else to.
yeah, the one on, that we're talking about on 11th, and I do have my cursor up on the screen on the south end. 2600 would get you about halfway to the intersection with Broadway. So it would be, you know, maybe this one, and then it would also still allow for one more. There's two more to the north here. So you'd have a maximum of 3 if this app turned to an electronic billboard, and then the one along Highway 8 would be another one if we imposed a 2,600 foot distance. So that would be the next thing. How the commission feels about a half-mile distance between these, and whether or not the commission would like to be more or less restrictive.
Are you suggesting that we build into our ordinance that we can have one of these every half mile all along Highway 8
What is being,
and all along Highway 35?
No, it would
in our
just-
jurisdiction?
no, it would just be allowing for electronic billboards. So the billboard would have to be there, and billboard would have to follow all other rules and regulations. Is it a highway that allows for it, a zoning district that allows for it? Would MnDOT permit it? And so if it's a, let's say it's Highway 8 and it's a zoning district that would allow it, and there's a state review as well of the billboard, and another billboard could go in, if it's at greater than a half-mile distance, then we could end up with 2 on Highway 8. But no, it's not for all of them. All of them are eligible. But as Commissioner Miller had pointed, or Commissioner Steeler, I don't remember, it's kind of a first come, first serve.
Yeah, I think most cities that I'm familiar with have some sort of a restriction in terms of how many in the distances. I think it would be scary to have 7 in a row, all changing, you know, so I would be in favor of a distance. I'm not sure if 2,600 feet or a half a mile is the distance. I mean, we could look at some other number, but.
We'll bring back other ordinances that are adjacent to us, just to see what those standards are along the 35, I would say, you know, from that 694 north, and really see what is that industry trend along that 35 corridor.
Because I know Columbus has been talking about expanding the distance between their billboards.
Oh, okay.
What,
'cause
I
they're
think you said
3,700 feet.
3,700
Yeah.
is what you said earlier?
3750.
3750, I think, is
There's been some discussion, though, that they want to increase that because they have too many billboards.
We can reach out to them, definitely. I know our legal counsel also works in a number of municipalities and has recently gone through an ordinance amendments of this nature, and other municipalities are very much less restrictive. So we'll look at kind of the variety of things to come back for. So
Name like Forest Lake, it would be nice if we didn't have to change our name to Billboard Central.
But we're so conveniently located to be Billboard Central. You know, we're right above the split, the Forest Lake split.
True that?
Do you guys consider back-to-back electronic sign-ins one, even if they have different messages, or would you require each side to have the same message at the same time? Or don't you care?
I don't think that makes sense. I mean,
I don't
you
care
can't
what
see
it
both
does.
sides at the same time, so.
Sure, okay.
I can't see both sides. Well, I shouldn't be able to.
Yeah, hope not.
It's not
If you
going
don't
well.
catch it in the first 8 seconds, you can catch it on the back 8 seconds.
Yeah, that's not gonna go well.
I think it's just a matter, right now, the way the code reads, it would, and if we imposed a buffer distance, it could be construed that if you have one on one side, you couldn't have one on the other. So it's all a matter of how we write that ordinance. And then, what about sides? We only allow our billboards to be 600 square feet. We are hearing that the industry standard is 672. I haven't done the research on that. I would imagine we've got billboards out there that are greater than 600 square feet. Do you want us to kind of take a look at what some of the other communities are doing? Bring something back for discussion, or?
That'd be I would like to know what the other communities are doing.
Sure.
My guess is, though, the gentleman's right, that they're making these things at a standard size.
I will say, based on the ordinances that Chuck has provided to the city, 600 square feet is very low compared to other jurisdictions.
But we
I'm
don't
sorry,
need to
it's a-
be in competition to be the biggest
Nope.
ones.
No, I agree with that.
But we also want to be cost competitive. If 672 is a standard,
Yeah, let's go with the
672.
standard.
I don't need, 10,000.
Any final other thoughts for staff, just as we go forth with this policy discussion, and we'll move forward with the
So
plan?
are you gonna write things in there about, like, possible percentage of ads or that kind of stuff? Is that
Yes,
gonna be in there?
when it
too?
comes
Okay.
to the community benefit, but not necessarily a percentage of local business versus national. That gets into kind of dictating message too much, but
All right, and
yes.
then what about the message or the content itself?
that's something that we cannot regulate content. That's a free speech thing. When it comes to the community content, that's gonna be a whole nother conversation with Chuck as we work through this process. Let's just say the ordinance said 15% of all ad space needs to be dedicated to community or public or whatnot. What that means for the role of the city in helping manage that, as noted, and as you recognize, we don't have the amount of resources to be kind of putting these things together, much less managing, the rotary pull punches this week, and then next week is, all of that kind of stuff. So those are things that we're gonna have to have an ongoing conversation about, for sure.
Yeah, but to me, actually, that's the biggest benefit of all. And that, if we need to manage that and manage that well, because if we can get these small messages out about what's going on in the community, like, a couple of days or whatever, I think that's huge. I really do.
I agree with you. The city has no dedicated staff for communications. That does make it a little bit tricky. So I'm stating that for the commission.
Thought we hired a communications person.
The position didn't work out, so.
I have a question regarding the lifespan of these signs. Is there anything in our ordinance that allows us to do away with them at a certain point in time?
Probably not right now, but certainly if a sign becomes obsolete, broken, just.
Well, I mean, just in general, to do away with billboards. I mean, if we wanted to eliminate, everybody has one of these. And if you drive a car and you have it on, you get an advertisement. If you use a navigation app, you get advertisements.
Yeah.
And I can see 10 years down the road, I'm with Susan on the whole billboard thing, but I'm just curious if there's no language in our ordinance to be able to get rid of them, there should be some kind of language to be able to put an end to them. If,
We can chat with our legal counsel, but generally, once something is permitted as per the zoning code, it's allowed to remain in
Okay.
perpetuity until it is removed. And then once it's removed, it would not be permitted to go
Oh.
back. So
if that's the way it is,
everyone
the way it
that's
is.
there has a vested land right now, but we can definitely talk with our legal counsel about that.
But there are several things in our ordinances that say, you know, if the building burns down, you have to stay within this or that footprint. So that if it were to be demolished for a reason, it couldn't be reconstructed.
The state law allows, like, if something was demolished, they usually typically have 1 year to still act on that vested right.
So for example, if a tornado wipes one out, we can't say, oh, sorry, you're done. Usually you got 6 months or 1 year to rebuild a house or a business or put up a replacement sign that was the same as what was there.
On the same footprint, yeah.
Yes.
But we can definitely put in billboard reduction or that sort of thing. We can look into it. Staff has enough direction unless the council or the commission has any further direction for staff.
Chair's looking for a motion.
A motion to table consideration of the electronic billboard zoning ordinance text amendment.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. It's a non-debatable motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you all for participating in the signs. Thank you for coming this evening.
Thank you for your patience.
And thank you for making it exciting.
You say that as if our meetings aren't exciting, Geneva.
I want him to come back.
He will.
Oh, he will.
I'll be in touch. Thanks, John.
I learned a lot about signs.
We learn a lot about signs, and this is why we never want to deal with the sign ordinance, because it's nothing but. We'll move to item 7, discussion. We don't normally have this line item.
No items of discussion, but yes, we do have a meeting next week. Your packet will be going out tomorrow. Hopefully, it's a complete packet, but just know that there might be a couple things that get delayed to Friday. We did have 8 or 9 private applications that were submitted for this month, so I thank you all for your willingness to have this extra meeting. They are also not all little things, hence staff's kind of throwing out there the idea of a consent agenda. I wish I would have maybe broached the subject with you earlier and kind of given everybody the heads up of what a consent agenda was. We have 2 items that we are proposing for consent agenda at your next meeting as well. So again, reserving time to discuss the things that might take a little bit more time. Completely understand if they get removed from the consent agenda and have more discussion, but we do have 2 things that are private and then 2 things that are ordinance amendments that we're going to try to clear off the books. January, we have a number already that we believe that are pending, bigger things that are coming up. Before the meeting, the December 14th meeting, there is a neighborhood meeting. Again, the commission is always invited to neighborhood meetings. It's here at City Hall in the community room upstairs, 5:30 p.m. And that is for the expansion of a residential living facility in a local neighborhood. And so that'll be actually on your agenda in January. Other than that, I don't have anything else for updates or discussion.
Abby, typically consent agendas are for things like, we're paying all the bills tonight, or we're, you know.
We would look at them as things that are rudimentary and routine. And frankly,
That we've already seen.
no, not all the time. Not all the time. There are sometimes agreements. When it comes to some of these site plan reviews, given the fact that you do have paid professional staff, engineers, planner that are here reviewing these, staff is with the hope that that you'll trust that we're doing the work and reviewing the applications in conformance with the code. Understandably that there is a lot of knowledge base here and a lot of interest in reviewing these more fine, with a more fine-grained review than we might do. But it is our hope that in time, we can put some of these things that we would, and what a lot of other communities would actually just be reviewing on an administrative level. So I understand if you don't want them on the consent agenda, you can always remove them, but we're gonna try with some of these site plan reviews to see if we can free up some time of the commission. Tonight, if you know, we spent 2 hours on two discussion items, good discussions, but with the caseload that we're having right now, we're just trying to ease these meetings some.
Because it took the Ford people 12 months to get their stuff together, doesn't put an obligation on us to immediately review things. I mean, they could have hustled their bustle a little bit throughout the year.
Well, I mean, we've been working with Ford since we had a pre-application meeting with them in June. So they have been working for quite some time on their application.
They said that they started this in January. And so.
Yeah, I mean, what an applicant says and what public record is often different. But yes, we had a pre-application meeting with them. I'm not exactly sure the exact date. I know I was fairly new here. It might have been early July when we first met with them. So, but yes, you're right. Because they submit doesn't mean that we have to review it. State law does require that we review applications for zoning matters within 60 days. We do have the right to extend to 120 days. We shouldn't necessarily be relying on that right because we have a high amount of workload. And really, frankly, we've got some other pressing development items that are going to come through that we have pushed off because we have needed more, staff has needed more analysis time. Until the wetland issue came up with Forest Lake Ford yesterday, we didn't believe that that was actually an application. In fact, had they not initiated a variance, I would have said that that one was a prime candidate for a consent agenda as well. But I think as we work through this, I think that we'll see the comfort level of the commission. It's my hope that you'll see that we have the capability, we have the resources. I think it's a matter of conveying it to the commission that we can kind of start to help hopefully streamline some of those reviews, some of those site plan reviews. Again, most site plan reviews also do require an improvement agreement, so this is just one stop in their process still of getting all of the city permissions before they could even get apply for a building permit.
And it was a nice packet for the Ford, with the exception of the one sheet for the underground water storage, which was inadvertently left out. It was a nice, complete package, which is nice to see. So, do appreciate that.
The other thing is you have folks here who live here and drive here and have been doing it for a long time and know some of the challenges over time that we notice, like culverts and the backup and the way things go. And so for the ability to take advantage of that.
Oh, yes,
knowledge.
Please don't think that I'm at all, you know, like I said, there's an incredible knowledge base, and that includes longevity. You are the community members. You are eyes and ears of the community. We do have, I mean, our engineering team has been with the city for 12 years. We are aware, though, of some of those challenges on these sites. But yes, I agree that you might know that sites more specifically than staff does, but it is, you know, this is our everyday world that we should know these things as well. So just know that it's a newer process. I appreciate your willingness to try it. We'll see how the next couple meetings go, and if it just really doesn't work, maybe we'll reevaluate. It's just one way that I think that we're really trying to, at least staff is trying to say, hey, heads up, this is probably not an hour conversation. Now that this commission may choose that for it to be an hour conversation, but our role is to look at things, look at the code that's in place, use our professional expertise, including a team of engineers, a team of people, to say it meets the code or it's going to meet the code with these conditions. Do you agree? So.
I don't want to use the term slam dunk, but we're kind of going at that route where I think we have a mutual understanding that there shouldn't be much discussion on it. Is that kind of what?
That is my hope. I mean, really, I wouldn't, with Culvers tonight, there wasn't substantial changes to the recommendation from
Yeah.
staff.
I actually like that. I like that it was part of how you had it laid out. I mean, there really wasn't much question, but the trash thing was one thing I guess I really didn't think of, but outside of that, I mean, I was pretty much ready to vote on it.
Right. So we'll be more cognizant, just trying to highlight all the things. But each of those staff reports take time, and, you know, it's, right, when we got 9 of them, and again, Ken and I are 2 people, we're trying to use our outside resources well, but use them limitedly, because comes at a cost to the city, it comes at a cost to the applicants, and so.
You just remember, Abby, we are here to earn our stipend.
I know that, and we are here
Extreme remuneration.
we are here to support you in your endeavors.
We'll move to number 8 and the other. Karen, do we have Councilperson Munson on the?
We do not have Councilperson Munson.
All right, we'll go down the line. Anything else, Abby?
No,
How
Ken?
many things are on the next agenda?
4, 2 on the consent and 2 public hearings for city-initiated ordinance amendments, ADUs and MXRs. That'll be on next week's agenda.
The site plan reviews are pretty routine, pretty straightforward, so. The ordinance will, I'm sure you'll have some discussion on those.
You'll be able to check it all out tomorrow when it's posted.
Living a dream. Ken, anything for us?
No, nothing else, thank you.
Karen?
I have nothing.
Geneva?
Nothing.
Justin?
Nothing for me.
Kevin?
With the added meetings and weather situation where people travel out of town, such as myself, and I heard others maybe we should email Karen dates that we're gonna be gone. And,
There won't be any additional meetings in
but January,
December.
there's.
January, we go back to our regular scheduled
Okay.
meetings, the 2nd and 4th Wednesday of the month.
The 11th and 25th.
But it's always a good idea to email me when you're
It
gonna be
is
gone.
always a good
I
idea
will go
to
ahead
notify
and
staff.
email you dates that I know I will not be.
We appreciate that because we want to make sure we have a.
Yes, that's why I brought it up, 'cause, yeah, okay, nothing.
Judith? I have nothing. Chair's looking for a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you all for your service this evening. It was a wonderful event.